All right. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. Bribery, corruption, condemned. You shall not take each other's money illicitly, nor shall you bribe the officials to deprive others of some of their rights illicitly, while you know. Do not beat around the bush. They ask you about the phases of the moon. Say they provide a timing device for the people and determine the time of Hajj. It is not righteous to beat around the bush. Righteousness is attained by upholding the commandments and by being straightforward. You shall observe God that you may succeed. Rules of war. You may fight in the cause of God against those who attack you, but do not aggress. God does not love the aggressors. You may kill those who wage war against you, and you may evict them whence they evicted you. Oppression is worse than murder. Do not fight them at the sacred mosque masjid unless they attack you therein. If they attack you, you may kill them. This is the just retribution for those disbelievers. If they refrain, then God is forgiver, most merciful. You may also fight them to eliminate oppression and to worship God freely. If they refrain, you shall not aggress. Aggression is permitted only against the aggressors. During the sacred months, aggression may be met by an equivalent response. If they attack you, you may retaliate by inflicting an equitable retribution. You shall observe God and know that God is with the righteous. You shall spend in the cause of God. Do not throw yourselves with your own hands into destruction. You shall be charitable. God loves the charitable.
And let's see. And we have the 2 footnotes I put right here. You want to read them?
You want me to read them too?
Yeah, go for it.
All right, so footnote in 189 says, the literal Quranic idiom says, do not enter the homes through the back doors. The question about the phases of the moon is an example of beating around the bush. There were bad ulterior motives behind this question. Footnote in 290 says, all fighting is regulated by the basic rule in 68 through 9. Fighting is allowed strictly in self-defense, while aggression and oppression are strongly condemned throughout the Quran.
I think these are really interesting verses, to be honest with you. Any questions? So we just read the verses from 2188 to 2195, Surah Baqarah, 2188 to 2195. Anyone have any questions or comments about what was read?
I have one comment.
Yeah, go for it.
So one statement in 2191 says, oppression is worse than murder. And then in 293 says, you may also fight them to eliminate oppression and to worship God freely.
Yeah.
See how important freedom of religion is, like to worship God freely. It's very important.
So, yeah, I agree with you. So let's start in order. 188, does anyone have any questions about it? The bribery, corruption? It's actually interesting that it says corruption is separate. He kind of mentions it as separate from bribery. 2190, we'll get to your verse, inshallah. 2189, wanted to comment on that one. 2189, if you look at the literal Arabic, it says, do not enter from the back doors. That's what you read in the footnote. It's a Quranic idiom, so do not enter the homes through the back doors. This is a problem I have with the modern day Quranist movement. You know, they try to translate the Quran themselves. What if they're at an idiom and they don't realize they're at an idiom, and then they just translate it literally and they take a literal approach to it?
Yeah, I actually want to stay on this for a little puddling. We see here, basically, almost every verse here continuously says that waging war is only against those who attacked you, aggressed against you. The verses are actually very clear. Fighting is only allowed in self-defense. That's very clear, actually. So, going into different lands and conquering them in the name of Islam doesn't exist, is not Quranic.
Assalamu alaikum. Sorry about that.
Okay, so
Did I miss the question? I was just commenting on that the Quranic idiom, where if there are idioms in the Quran, which we know there are, why do I have to take a literal interpretation of any verse? That's very dangerous because then I could be making a lot of I can have a lot of problems in how I'm moving on these. That's extremely dangerous. All right, so that's the 2189. Because if I take it literally and I say, okay, this means that I cannot enter any homes through the back door. I have to insist on the front door. That's extremely dangerous, right? But people talk about these verses in a literal sense, and then they are very, they will be very adamant and confident in that position. That's what's scary in my position, in my view.
Yeah, I mean that's actually very good. That's very true. Like the Quran is. I actually read the translation once that way. That's actually said that don't enter through the back door. Literally, I feel like anyone who doesn't respect the system of God sending messengers
Yeah.
is
Yeah.
not getting the.
All right, let's go back to the verse. So 2190, it says, "You may fight in the cause of God against those who attack you, but do not aggress. God does not love the aggressors." So Erda made a really good point that freedom of religion is extremely important. 2191, it says oppression is worse than murder, right? And think about this, you being evicted. It says you may kill those who wage war against you, and you may evict them where they evict you. So obviously now in this era, we're not and physically in the West, I can't be in a physical war in Western, countries. Maybe if I go to Ukraine, but right. So if someone evicts me from, a Discord server or Masjid or whatever, that's kind of like an eviction. And what about 2193, Erdem? What do you think about that verse? You may fight them to eliminate oppression and to worship God freely. How do you understand that portion of the verse?
Yeah, for example, if Gaddafi gives you just an example, right? If he gives you the death sentence because you want to worship God alone, then you may fight. It's the same thing. It's only self-defense, really.
But bro, to me, that's a very extreme example. If I want to just practice my religion, I should be able to. It doesn't even have to be death sentence.
Yeah.
I mean, I should be able to. Freedom of speech, I think, is part of this. So if I get in trouble for expressing my point of view in terms of my religion, that's also removal of my freedom of speech. Do you disagree?
Yeah.
No, you don't disagree.
Yeah, no, I agree.
Yeah. So, for example, we read the verse that says, you may fight them to eliminate oppression, to worship God freely. That's interesting because that kind of is a workaround against aggressors, right? It says aggression is permitted against the aggressors. The common misconception is they have to personally aggress towards me for me to have permission to fight back or fight them. That's not true. If I see someone aggressing against you or an oppressive system, I can fight it. It doesn't have to be personally directed at me. Do you understand and do you agree?
Mashallah, that's a good point. Yeah. Makes me think of Zulkarnain, where he was liberating the oppressed people. Makes me think of that one.
Yeah, I mean, that's the way I see it. So, like, for example, this has come up. So, for example, I said, like, if I'm in Iran, they don't even need to do against me anything personally. I already have the authority to fight them because they banned my religion, they banned my practices, everything. So I can already fight them. I'm just using Iran as an example, right? That's what comes to my head. You can same thing about Libya or wherever else. Because it says you can fight to eliminate oppression and to be able to worship God freely. If you already can't, then you're already authorized to fight. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, there's also this good point here in 294, which says during the same aggression may be met by an equivalent response. If they attack you, you may retaliate by inflicting an equitable retribution. So there is a balance here. You're not gonna chop someone's head off because he slapped you, right? It's it's a equivalent response. So the amount, I guess, it's an equitable. It needs to be balanced.
I'm not sure. I'm not sure if that's correct. To be honest with you, in terms of our understanding of it, if someone launches war on me, I can fight back. Is that not right? Can I just destroy them? I think that's you can. So the retribution maybe is the punishment part. Like I'm not going to take prisoners of war and like decapitate them, but if they bomb me, I can with one bomb, I can bomb back with 10 bombs. Is that not correct?
Yeah, it's true. But it's still an equivalent response, though.
So is that so you're saying equivalent is relative equivalence is relative in this situation? War?
I mean, if war is opened, you get an equivalent response is warring back until you win.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm just saying that, for example,
Okay.
for example, the freedom of worship, yeah, you should think about that.
About the verses we read, 2188 to 2185. Let's load up the next batch of verses, inshallah. Packed verses. Here we go.
I can read, yeah, sure.
Go for it. Okay, go for it.
2186. You shall observe the complete rites of Hajj and Umrah for God. If you are prevented, you shall send an offering and do not resume cutting your hair until your offering has reached its destination. If you are ill or suffering a head injury and you must cut your hair, you shall expiate by fasting or giving charity or some other form of worship. During the normal Hajj, if you break your state of Ihram between Umrah and Hajj, you shall expiate by offering an animal sacrifice. If you cannot afford it, you shall fast 3 days during Hajj and 7 when you return home. This completes 10, provided you do not live at the sacred masjid. You shall observe God and know that God is strict in enforcing retribution. Hajj shall be observed in the specified months. Whoever sets out to observe Hajj shall refrain from sexual intercourse, misconduct, and arguments throughout Hajj. Whatever good you do, God is fully aware thereof. As you prepare your provisions for your journey, the best provision is righteousness. You shall observe me, O you who possess intelligence. You commit no error by seeking provisions from your Lord through commerce. When you file through Arafat, you shall commemorate God at the sacred location. You shall commemorate him for guiding you. Before this you had gone astray. You shall file together with the rest of the people and people who file, and ask God for forgiveness. God is the forgiver, most merciful. Once you complete your rites, you shall continue to commemorate God as you commemorate your own parents, or even better. Some people would say, "Our Lord, give us of this world, while having no share in the hereafter." Others would say, "Our Lord, grant us righteousness in this world and righteousness in the hereafter, and spare us the retribution of hell." Each of these will receive the share they have earned. God is the most efficient in reckoning.
I can read the footnotes real quick. Thank you. So 296 to see the details of Hajj and Umrah in Appendix 15. 297 Hajj can be observed anytime during the sacred months, Zul Hijjah, Muharram, Safar, and Rabi 1. Local governments restrict Hajj to a few days for their own convenience. See 937. Let me just load 937 real quick. Okay. So altering the sacred months, 937, altering the sacred months is a sign of excessive disbelief. It augments the strength of those who have disbelieved. They alternate the sacred months and the regular months while preserving the number of months consecrated by God. Thus, they thus violate what God has consecrated. Their evil works are adorned in their eyes. God does not guide the disbelieving people. The sacred months, according to the corrupted Muslim world, are Rajab, Zulqa'dah, Zulhijjah, and Muharram, 7, 11, 12, and 1. The months of the Islamic calendar. A careful study of the Quran, however, reveals that they should be Zulhijjah, Muharram, Safar, and Rabi 1. I think the reason for that is before we get too much into it, but I think it's because it has to start with Zulhijjah because that is the month of Hajj. And then we learn in the Quran that it says that they should be sequential, not alternating. So then if it's 12 as the first one, then if it's 4 months, then it should be 12, 1, 2, 3, 4. And that's interesting because it says, we read in this verse that it says that they keep the correct number of months. So we know it's 4, right? Because the traditionalists acknowledge that it's 4 months. So 4 months is correct, but they alternate the months. So therefore, that's why 7 is disjointed. And the first month should be Zulhijjah because that's a month of Hajj, sorry. So then it's Zulhijjah, Muharram, Safar, and Rabi 1. That's 12, 1, 2, 3. Any questions or comments on that aspect?
No, I think we can move on.
That's kind of cool, right? All right, so going back, I'm just looking at the ihram state, animal sacrifice, fasting 3 days when you come home. Okay, this is the Quran study. Assalamu alaikum, Monica. We read from 2180. We read from 2188 all the way to 202. Any questions or comments on what has been read? Anyways, the question that I had was 2197. It's really interesting. You cannot have misconduct and arguments throughout Hajj, but also says refrain from sexual intercourse during Hajj. So my understanding is in the Quran, whenever it says sexual intercourse, it's talking about a specific act of that. And Mustafa was disputing it.
Real quickly, what's like an argument consist of? Like if someone like takes your thing, can you like go confront that person, or do you just have to let it go?
I think you either have to let it go or just get it done quickly.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I think just arguing and bickering and these kinds of things distracts you from God. Yeah. It also says misconduct. What do you guys think is misconduct? I never thought about that.
Like the stealing, right? Like the example I made, like someone steals your thing, that's like misconduct. Misconduct would be like any of the things in the Quran that is labeled or condemned as being unrighteous. Like back talking or gossiping, to stealing, to killing.
But couldn't it just say, like, don't commit sins? I feel like it goes beyond, because in normal circumstances we can argue, but it's saying don't argue during Ramadan, or not Ramadan, Hajj. So I feel like it's a little bit different. Don't you agree?
Well, I think that it's all encompassing of all the things ever condemned in the Quran and labeled as bad, like bad behavior.
Okay.
Not specifically that point, but yeah.
So the interesting part of Hajj is that you send an offering and you do not cut your hair. So this made me think of some interesting, similar to the worship practice given in the book of Moses. In Numbers 9, it says, "Speak to the Israelites and tell them, when a man or a woman solemnly takes the Nazirite vow to dedicate himself to the Lord, he shall abstain from wine and strong drink. He may neither drink wine vinegar, oil vinegar, or any kind of grape juice, nor eat either fresh or dried grapes." And it says, as long as he is a Nazirite, he shall not eat anything of the produce of the vine, not even unique, unripe grapes, And then it says, while he is under the Nazirite vow, no razor shall touch his hair. Until the period of his dedication to the Lord is over, he shall be sacred, and let the hair of his head grow freely. As long as he is dedicated to the Lord, he shall not enter where a dead person is. And then it continues. Obviously, we do not have the rule of the dead person, but some things just seem to be similar. Not raising your hair, not shaving your hair. And also, it says that during the Nazarite vow, the person is sacred, considered sacred. This makes me think of this statement here. State of Imra, right? Ihram, sanctity, right?
You know what I was thinking of in regards to this? To me, it seems like God is just removing all distractions, like everything, right? You think about it. You're not having sexual intercourse. You're not arguing with anyone. You're not like spending time like grooming and shaving and cutting your hair or doing, all these things, right? Because think about that. Let's say I spend 20 minutes or 30 minutes or an hour, shaving my beard and whatever.
Ego.
What's that?
Yeah, all the ego things, all the vanity, all that, it's gone. Yeah, good point.
Yeah, and I'm thinking about it mostly in terms of like the time, even like that takes up time that I'm taking away from, devoting to God in the worship while I'm there. It's a mental state that's focusing, and also time that's being taken away. But that's why the next verse God says, you commit no error by seeking provisions from your Lord through commerce.
Because
I have a quick comment. Since we're
go ahead. Yes, please.
We're talking about Hajj. I put in a verse in Psalms that actually talks about what I think many of us would say is referencing the people of Zion going and doing Hajj pilgrimage. Of course, the Christian scholars would argue that the Bekaa Valley is something in Lebanon, but it's like quite clearly false. And it's actually referring to the the Hajj we do. So I just wanted to show how like the rites of Christianity and the rites of Islam are were originally the same, but it was corrupted over time.
Yeah, so interestingly, there's a state of ihram, which is sanctity, or as the Bible puts it, as they translate it, sacredness. And yeah, the Hajj issue, Bekaa issue, is an interesting one. But there's one more thing that I noticed here. It says, as you prepare your provisions for the journey, the best provision is righteousness. So you can take like things you like as food. You can take some things that you like, right? Like cassette tapes, whatever, an iPod maybe. But you can basically take your provisions for the journey. And it says the best provision is righteousness. This is interesting. So you need to prepare your soul as in the form of righteousness. You can't just be a submitter one day and the next day go to Hajj. You need to prepare your provision of righteousness first. Could take years.
That's a really good point. So yeah, I was thinking about that. I was thinking about how much we use our phones and stuff, and I was thinking about how if I was on Hajj, I would want to limit my phone usage. You know what I mean? Because I wouldn't want to be messing around on my phone, social media, this and that. I would just want to be focused on my religious obligations and my duties and my worship while I'm there.
Can we take our phone to Hajj?
I think so. In case you get lost, I guess, right? I guess you won't get lost. I don't know. I think
it would be possible to get lost. No, I think you have to take care of it.
Yeah, that's a good point. No, you lose each other. Let's say you're a group of 3 people and there's a big crowd and you get swept up. You're not going to be able to find each other 100%. So that's interesting. Diogo just shared a video which apparently shows that the Bible shows Moses did pilgrimage to Mecca, which obviously we believe. So when he met with Jethro, married his daughters, and he said, I work for you for 8 pilgrimages, it's referencing Hajj of Mecca. And the Quranist approach would be, well, Hajj just means argument. So he had 8 arguments with his father-in-law. He said, look, just argue with me 8 times, and you can have my daughters. Did he have one or both? I think he just had one of the daughters.
Yeah, so the Quranists, yeah, that's true. The Quranists believe that Hajj is argumentation, right?
Yes. So he had 8 arguments. So the dowry was 8 arguments. I'm just saying, man. I've had many arguments. I've had like 1,000 arguments, so I've paid a lot of dowry. I'm just saying.
Imagine your dowry to get the girl to marry a girl is you need to argue with the father. Like that's the dowry. Can you imagine that? It doesn't make sense, does it?
So any questions or comments on the verses we read? We got that was actually interesting. You got the comparisons of the Hajj pilgrimage or whatever activities that is. So I was gonna say that I have this like very exotic, comprehensive, broad, expansive understanding of Hajj, but then when I look at the pictures, it's like not even that scary. Like I'm thinking about like you have to march for miles in the middle of the desert. You don't have water. There's hot sun, like all this stuff. And then I looked at the pictures. They're like, even the knolls of Safa and Marwa are like inside air conditioned facilities, very short distance. I guess that makes sense, right? Like if Hajj is supposed to be for everyone, for like a 20-year-old man to a 90-year-old man, from all walks of life. I guess it's not supposed to be that hard. So I didn't think this. I guess I misunderstood. I always thought it's going to be like really hard, but it's like that's not even possible. Because then, what about all the old people?
For some people, it's too easy. They get like they spend like $100,000 on for like these big hotels and like luxurious packages and whatnot.
I wanted to go to Hajj. I had some money saved up. I guess I'm not going this summer, but I wanted to. Maybe next year, inshallah. I wanted to just do the Hajj and get it over with.
Mm-hmm.
And I felt
Yeah.
like I would enter a new stage of submission if I did it.
That's true, but like you need to prepare your righteousness first, right? Do you think you're ready for that? Do you think
So
your
I don't-
righteousness? Yeah.
I don't know. I feel like I'm kind of plateaued on my righteousness. I think this is what it is, bro. This is,
That's what it is.
it's kind of that's what it is, bro. Like if
How long you been submitter?
like almost 20 years, 19 years.
MashaAllah. Okay. Yeah. I guess so. Yeah.
2003, I guess, 2002, 2003 to now. So almost 20 years. So this is pretty much it, man. If you're expecting more righteous, I mean, inshallah, it will be more righteous, but it's just harder to get more righteous when you get more into fine tuning stuff. I think for righteousness, you like obviously you right away you should get rid of the big things, like for example, drinking, extramarital sex, drugs, whatever, all of these like big things, using bad language, and then you start getting the more fine tuning details of righteousness, right? Like more very specific to stuff.
Yeah. There's also interesting. A couple verses later, there's a prayer, 201, where the believers say, "Oh Lord, grant us righteousness in this world and righteousness." from this passage."
221?
Yep.
Or
Chapter 2, verse. Yeah.
Did we
Chapter.
reach that? Yeah,
What?
we did. Yeah, we did. 2201. It
Yeah.
says, "Our Lord." Others will say, "Our Lord, grant us righteousness in this world and righteousness in the hereafter, and spare us the retribution of hell." That's a good prayer. So
Yeah.
we got to say the right prayer. So look at what God is talking about here. These people are messed up. Look at this. So 200 says, "Once you complete your rites, you shall continue to commemorate God as you commemorate your own parents, or even better." Some people would say, "Our Lord, give us of this world," while having no share in the hereafter. Wow.
Yeah, exactly. Our Lord, give us of this world. That's the only thing to think about. This makes me think of like very successful people in this world
Mm.
that don't think about the afterlife.
Wow.
And God says they have no share in the hereafter, but each of these will receive the share they have earned.
Mm.
So they if they earn provisions in this world, success in this world, they do get it. They do receive it. But if they don't want anything from the hereafter, they don't get a share from the hereafter.
So should we let's finish up the Hajj stuff, I guess.
Yeah, before we move on from Artem's comment, that was nice about the preparing yourself with righteousness. I just I kind of have, it's not a list, but I can really quickly just go through just to give an idea of the kinds of things to prepare yourself for. And of course, you're going to have beliefs like last day, angels, scripture, prophets. Give money cheerfully. You do obligatory charity. Keep your word. You're truthful, steadfast in the face of persecution. Equivalence when, of course, in cases of murder. Let's see, right of will. Equitable compensations. You forfeit dowries. You give to charity every possessions you love. You eagerly race towards forgiveness. You're a suppressor of anger. You give to charity during good times and bad times. You're partners of the people. You ask forgiveness for sins. Your truth. You're of the truthful. Let's see. You're endowed with. Let's see. When the devil approaches them with an idea, they remember. That was just kind of a short list of things to think about to be righteous.
Thank you. That was good. Okay. Any other questions or comments left on that topic? If not, can we get a volunteer for the last 8 verses?
Okay.
All right, here we go.
Starting.
I could read. Oh, you want to read, Jeff?
Yeah, we're starting where?
203. I put it in the VC1 chat.
203. Minna, last rites of Hajj. You shall commemorate God for a number of days in Minna. Whoever hastens to do this in 2 days commits no sin, and whoever stays longer commits no sin, so long as righteousness is maintained. You shall observe God and know that before him you will be gathered. Appearances may be deceiving. Among the people, one may impress you with his utterances concerning this life, and may even call upon God to witness his innermost thoughts, while he is a most ardent opponent. As soon as he leaves, he roams the earth corruptingly, destroying properties and lives. God does not love the corruption. When he is told, observe God, he becomes arrogantly indignant. Consequently, his only destiny is hell. What a miserable abode. Then there are those who dedicate their lives to serving God. God is compassionate towards such worshipers. O you who believe, you shall embrace total submission. Do not follow the steps of Satan, for he is your most ardent enemy. If you backslide after the clear proofs have come to you, then know that God is almighty, most wise. Are they waiting until God himself comes to them in dense clouds together with the angels? When this happens, the whole matter will be terminated, and to God, everything will be returned. The footnote says, this world is a test. It is our last chance to restore ourselves back into God's kingdom by denouncing idol worship. See introduction. If God and his angels show up, everyone will believe, and the test will no longer be valid. Miracles. Am I done? Did I go too far?
No, that's
okay.
it. That's it. That's correct.
Yeah.
You did it all right. Proper.
No,
I've been looking for that verse for a long time. Go ahead.
I think it's really cool how 2:10 tells us what we're going to see on the day of judgment. That God is going to come to us dense in the clouds together with all the angels. And it says this in 2:10.
Yeah.
And then I also think it's cool how. So one time I heard a discussion with the Quranists, and the argument was that since God says during wartime to only do 1 rakat or 1 unit of prayer, that means we have to do at least 2, and they were arguing on that front. And I think this is we have an example here in 203, where when God is very specific with the language he uses, when he says number of days, he specifically means just more than 1. We can be however specific and however broad we want to, but it always means, like, when God says something like this, you have to take it for face value, which I think is important to keep in mind when we're reading the entire Quran.
That's a good comment. Thank you.
MashaAllah, yeah, that's good. Those are good comments. I actually never realized how it was giving a depiction of God coming in dense clouds as well. That's also a good comment, MashaAllah.
Okay, so yeah, because when God comes himself, this verse is actually really good. To 2:10, it proves that it's over. The whole thing's done. We got to save that verse. That's really comes in handy because we debate a lot, and people say, "Well, God's not coming." It's like the God's coming.
Yeah. Also, the fact that God's not here.
Exactly, because the other one says that God comes and with the angels row after row. Imagine like infinite number of rows just coming towards us. Do we get to see that? We don't get to see that, do we? Because we show up after the thing's done. I guess the people that think about that, if you're alive during 2280, you get to see that. Then we get to see it after. We don't get to see it. We just wake up after the world's exploded. Is that right?
Wait, are you sure about that?
Well,
Yeah.
because the world ends when they show up, right? The physical presence of God destroys everything, like the mountain exploded when Moses tried to see God. So then the whole thing terminates, and then we wake up, and I guess the horn is blown, then we're knocked out again, and then we wake up, and then that's the stratification process.
Wait. Okay, it's a little confusing because there's the waking up there's the resurrection on this earth, and then there's the creation of the new earth, the explosion, and that and so there's the two events. Is it not? Just
Okay, so I put the verses. 3968 says the horn will be blown, whereupon everyone in the heavens and the earth will be struck unconscious, except those who be spared by God. So Rashad teaches us that that's just one person, the person blowing the horn, because you don't just blow the horn and then knock yourself out. So there's one person, Raphael, or he's an angel, Raphael, who's blowing the horn, and he's saved. Everyone else is out. Everyone is out. Then the earth will shine the light of its Lord. The record will be proclaimed, and the prophets and the witnesses will be brought forth. Everyone will be judged equitably without the least injustice. Every soul will be paid for whatever it did, for he is fully aware of everything they have done. Why does it send prophets? I've seen this several times where it talks only about prophets and not messengers. Why? What's special about the prophets, in your view?
I mean, people of the book, right? I guess every people of the book is going to be with the book and the prophet that brought the book.
So Saleh is not welcome?
Saleh is, if I understand correctly, Saleh is going to be with the people that were with the book they had before. So the last book, the last prophet. Who was before Saleh, the prophet?
Who was before Saleh? Oh, a bunch of people.
No. I mean the last one, the last prophet before Saleh. Was that Noah? Was Noah a prophet? Yeah, right?
Let's take a look. Before Saleh. Before Saleh. Yeah, Noah, I guess. You're just going way too far back, man. And Saleh didn't do Salat, did he?
Not that we know. No, Salah was given to Abraham.
But Shoaib did. Because he was after Lot. And it says in the Quran, it says, what is his Salat? Pretty cool, huh? You didn't know that. Shoaib did Salat. So we also have Hud, and then obviously before we have Idris, Noah, and Adam. Yeah. Anyway. All right. So going back to what we're at. So any other questions about what we have? Let's look at the beginning. I want to talk about 2:204 in the order of what we read. It says, among the people, one may impress you with his utterances concerning this life, and may even call upon God to witness his innermost thoughts, while he is a most ardent opponent. So where do we get appearances? Is this not physical appearances? Because my understanding, during the Hajj, you're stripped of your clothing. So then this is a question that was raised recently. It's like, okay, so then dressing nicely doesn't apply to the sacred masjid or what?
You know, there are other types of appearances. Actually, I talked about this last night. We always have these images in our head of what a holy person, a very spiritual person is. You know, they're like very slow and they have very intentional looks and everything controlled, and their voice sounds magical, things like this. I don't trust that kind of a person. Like I see Dr. Khalifa, that's one of the things I really loved about it. This is a guy. He's just a normal guy talking to you, communicating. None of this putting on this appearance of holiness, and that's what I think of.
Yeah, actually, he was something I noticed as well. He was talking about at some points, very, very spiritual issues, but just like a normal conversation.
Yeah, exactly.
So if we read the statement from Appendix 11, doesn't it seem like the resurrection happens and then God comes with the angels? It says, as the Almighty approaches, the stars will crash into one another and the earth will shatter under our feet. This means the resurrection already happened, right?
No. Nope. Mm-mm.
Yeah, read the statement right before.
Yeah, that's the way I see it is those people are still on Earth, and then he shows up, and then it blows up. But the rest of us are sleeping because we're in a state of death, or whatever you want to call it. Right? The stratification process that happens afterwards. Yeah.
Yeah, so the souls, like for example, the prophets and the messengers that are now in the high heaven, like in the heaven that is currently available, when God comes, that heaven is a universe. It's going to shatter, and then when He comes here to us, deeper and deeper into existence, it comes to our universe and it shatters as well.
So the word's the new earth. What's your position on that?
I think the new earth is created after He came and the universe is crashed. So then the new earth happens. I'm just trying to figure out if we witness the coming of God and the angels.
We have to see them, right? Because it says when that happens, that the whole thing's terminated, right? I don't know. Is that wrong?
Well, and also there's the period of everyone sees hell, unless we're saying that this is seeing hell.
Yeah, so when all the universes crash and get destroyed by God's physical presence, the new earth and heaven created and hell is created, the eighth universe. And then probably we see hell, right? Because it's created, like it must be somewhere beneath us or something.
So here's the verses on that. The New World Order. New heavens and new earth. 1448. The day will come when this earth will be substituted with a new earth, and also the heavens, and everyone will be brought before God, the one, the supreme. And you will see the guilty on that day chained in shackles. Their garments will be made of tar, and fire will overwhelm their faces. For God will pay each soul for whatever it earned. God is the most efficient reckoner. So that's the new earth. New earth and also the heavens.
And hell.
Well, hell, yeah, but hell, we didn't have hell before. There's no hell.
No, I'm saying it after the new earth, he creates the hell too, the eighth dimension.
Right. Yeah, that's true. So, yeah, I'm getting sidetracked. I'm just wondering what they used tar for 1,400 years ago. What's the function of tar? I don't know. Maybe it had a function. I don't know. Okay. Garment of tar. All right. Okay. So the sequence of events kind of interesting. Anyway, 69:17 says the angels will be all around. Your Lord's dominion will then encompass 8 universes. 69:17, the earth is full of misery because of its physical distance from God. Since it is the 7th universe, 7143, in the hereafter, an 8th universe will be created that will be even farther than our 7th universe. It will be called hell. 8923. Let's take a look. On that day, Gehenna will be brought forth. On that day, the human being will remember. But what a remembrance! It will be too late. Okay. All right. So, any questions or comments on the verses that we read?
I was just going to add about your tar comment that even with what was it? Who's it? Zalhiffer. He poured tar.
Oh yeah.
So they were using tar in battle or whatever too.
That's a good point.
Also, it's made up of hydrocarbons, so it can be used to burn, I think.
Interesting. So he used Zulkarnain used tar. He reached the valley between the 2 palisades, and the language is barely understandable. He wanted to build a dam, and then he brought masses of iron. Interesting. Look what it says. It made it so he couldn't even access it anymore. Look what he did, this guy. I wonder if we'll ever find out who Zulkarnain was for sure. It says, bring to me masses of iron. Once he filled the gap between the 2 palisades, he said, blow. Once it was red hot, he said, help me pour tar on top of it. Thus, they could not climb it, nor could they bore holes in it.
So it's a kind of binder and something that helps burn something.
So what's your position on a palisade? What's a palisade? Because palisade is just a fence of wooden stakes. Is that correct? Yeah, I thought it might be Cyrus the Great too, to be honest. But it's just speculation. Some people say it's Buddha, Alexander.
It does seem to be Cyrus the Great because he had an expedition to the west and then to the east and then to the south and then to the east, but he didn't make a wall in the east, so there's a problem.
So is this what you believe that palisade is?
No. Palisades can be like bluffs along, like a cliff on the side of a river. Even that it can be that.
So which one is it here? So don't you think we have to look at the Arabic to find out?
This is a continuing argument, guys.
Let's take a look at the Arabic for Palestine. 1896. Go. Because this is a multiple meaning word in English, so the only way to resolve that is look at Arabic.
I don't know. It says Palisades here, and they're showing a picture of cliffs on the side of a river in English. Works pretty good for me.
Yeah, but when I put Palisades, this is the image that I got. Yeah, it is cliffs, so the Arabic is cliffs.
So it worked. Okay. Anyway, not on that point. Interesting though. But you know what? I think it was Buddha. I think we have audio tape where he said it was Buddha, actually.
I think he said, I have him saying it was probably Buddha, but I don't have him verifying that it was.
Okay.
Yeah. There's, we don't know if, I don't remember the audio right now, but was it a statement of speculation, or was it
it sounds like speculation to me. That doesn't sound like a divine revelation. probably Buddha. That
So
doesn't.
if he's not sure, then
Yeah, then that's not any. Yeah, if you have anything that's saying he's sure, but if he's not sure, then not really. Yeah. So yeah, exactly. That's how I
Well,
seen it.
I,
The way
I've got it.
Ahmed wrote, that's the way I saw it. Yeah, go ahead.
I see. The conversation something like this. It's a piece of information. Let's see. Gog and Magog. He was talking about, and then somebody said, "Buddha, a messenger," and he said, "Who?" And they said, "Buddha." He said, "Yes, definitely." He said he's a messenger. Oh, okay. And it was in context of Gog and Magog. Yes, definitely. And then I'm under the impression that he got rid of Gog and Magog, a person said. And then he said, yes. How do you know? Because he preached the worship of God alone, something like that. It's kind of a hard tape to listen to. That's what he's got there.
Okay.
Where?
Right.
Yeah, I'll just tell you where that is. 27, like 25 minutes into, let's see, Quran Study 51.
Okay. Yeah, we'll take a look, inshallah. All right. So, we read the verses. So, when it says about appearances may be deceiving, so it's not, you guys are saying it's not a physical appearance or what? I think it's a combination, right? Because it's utterances, stuff like that. Separate issue. Jeff, when are you planning on going to Hajj?
Oh, I think I got to take care of all my obligations here first, which is going to take a long time. Isn't that the way it goes? Aren't we? Oh, maybe that's from Hadith. I don't know. I just.
I haven't heard about that before. It sounds like Hadith because we always have obligations, I guess. Unless we're like 90.
Yeah, that must be from. Wow, look at that little residue. Okay. Huh. Yeah, I'd love to, God willing. Would you go? What would you go during the Hajj? Is that the only time to do it, or do you go? Can you go do it off times and just kind of freelance?
Do it. Yeah, I would. So I think Michael Jackson, the submitter in Toronto, he did it. He did it. You know, he just did it. I guess. Obviously during our sacred months that God says, and he just did it. And for them, it was like Umrah or whatever, but he just did it. You know, that kind of thing. Because we got Hajj and Umrah.
Well, let me ask you that question. Did you guys already talk about? I wasn't sure if you talked about this. What is the difference? Because the way I was starting to understand it is that Umrah is an aspect of Hajj, and so
part of it. That's right.
But the way we used to talk about it as a Sunni is it was a separate event that you did. No, I didn't go during Hajj time. I went and did Umrah. You know what I'm saying? People would say they did it like in off season, off times. But I was under the impression now that Umrah is just an aspect of it. So everybody always does Umrah when they do Hajj. Isn't that true? Could you clarify that?
Yeah, Umrah is just a part of it.
Yeah.
But yeah, so you basically do a portion and then that's Umrah and then you're done. But if you keep going and complete the rest of it, then it becomes Hajj.
Right. And so do they give you on the off months, not the sacred months, but the months where Saudi Arabia doesn't consider it Hajj, do you have access to Mina and the
I guess you can have access, but obviously they did it. I thought they limited only to like a few days, not even like a month.
Oh yeah, they do. They do limit Hajj to that week or whatever, that time period.
That's
From
why
what
people die. That's why people die, because there's too many people crammed into space. If you spread it out over months, then it's going to be it's going to be facilitate a lot more people. But if you make it a week, then everyone's going to start getting crammed. And that's when people die at this station of. So the stoning ceremony, that's when people die. Like, that's when people get crushed.
So I think Umrah is essentially it's off-season Hajj, right? Addressing the question that Jeff was asking, and they
no,
do.
that was. Do you know this? Is this? Are you? Could you clarify all this? Because I had the impression that that's how we
Yes.
thought of it as a Sunni, but
Yes,
I
as
don't.
far as I know, Umrah refers to Hajj at any other time of the year. That's the only difference. So they would treat Hajj during the rest of the sacred months as Umrah, the Saudi authorities. So I guess whoever they consider, it's problematic because of whatever their criterion is, that you have to be a Muslim based on their definition. So you have to belong to a certain Sunni or Shia sects to
Can I
get.
just
That's a different issue. But other than that, I think they do give Umrah access during the rest of the sacred months.
Yeah. So can I ask, or can I just really quickly just talk about the Umrah portion for Jeff? So Jeff,
Yes.
Umrah portion is you begin to shower, you fall in a state of ihram, sanctity. Male pilgrim wears the seamless sheets. Women wears a modest dress. Then obviously don't do all the things that we're talking about. Cleanliness, bathing, regular hygiene are encouraged. You arrive at the Masjid Haram, sacred mosque in Mecca, a walk around the Kaaba 7 times, glorifying God, saying Labbaika Allahumma Labbaik. My God, I have responded to you. Labbaika la sharika laka labbaik. I have responded to you, and I proclaim that there's no other God besides you. I responded to you. The next step is walk the half-mile distance between the knolls of Safa and Marwa 7 times with occasional trotting. This completes the Umrah portion of pilgrimage. That's it. So
Got it.
what is this? So Umrah is like what? Not even 2 hours, 3 hours, less than that even, maybe, right? I don't know how long it takes. How long does it take? Half-mile distance. You're walking maybe 7 times. So 7 times 0.5. Let's see. That's 3.5 miles. So you can finish that whole thing in a couple hours, I guess. So Umrah is really short relative to Hajj, I guess.
So that's a component of pilgrimage that
Yeah.
you can complete in a couple hours, whatever. But that I'm looking at Appendix 15, and it says Umrah can be observed anytime. So
That's a good point. That's what B said. Yeah, that's correct.
so anytime. So that's cool. But you do it. It's not separate from Hajj. It's a part of Hajj. But any time of the year, you can go and do Umrah
So
which is
take that. Yeah, we could just take that and then do the rest and then complete our Hajj even outside of what the Saudi government allows or recognizes.
And they wouldn't restrict Muzdalifah and Arafat after Hajj. Is that? I don't know. I have not researched this. So.
Yeah. So then you go to Arafat. You spend a day at Arafat, dawn to sunset. Then you go to Muzdalifah. You do night prayer. Then you go and you do the 21 pebbles, stoning of Satan at Mina. Then Muzdalifah. You go to Mina and spend 2 or 3 days. Then first morning of Mina, you offer animal sacrifice.
The point is access to Muzdalifah and Arafat, is it restricted at other times?
That's a good question. I'm not sure. Let's check.
Yeah, I think the bigger problem is you have to lie that you are Sunni or something.
Hmm. What if you just say you're non-sectarian Muslim? Is that sufficient?
I don't think they take that.
But okay, let's talk about that. Don't we consider that okay to lie in that circumstance? It's like he because he said, if you go to the Middle East, you better disown me. He said that, and
But
he
that's
used the verse.
different, though, Jeff. That's different. That's you can lie when your life is at risk. You have a verse for that. But if you're going to Hajj to perform Hajj, that's your life. I don't know. I don't know about that one. You know what I mean? It's a little bit different.
Sticky.
And even the Prophet was restricted from the Hajj for most of his mission, and he did not do it. He did not go there, and even his followers, I don't think they did the Hajj until the very end, after the occupation of Mecca.
Right. Right.
So
They didn't.
this is the exact same scenario where they were believers and they were
Yeah.
forbidden for the same reasons. They were non-sectarian Quraysh kind of, and the same reason that's today is the same reason they were restricted then, because they worshipped God alone, and because of that reason they were outcast. And until God gave them victory in the last year, they could not do it. So I see it as a similar scenario right now. So.
Yeah. In your clothing of righteousness, how could you lie? You know, there's no way.
Yeah, I don't know about that. Yeah, I don't know about that whole thing. So, but I can ask what you have access to in terms of. I can ask what you have access to in terms of that. You know what I mean? Muzdafila, I guess. That's the whole question.
Yeah.
But apparently you have access, I guess. I don't know. I think, here, this is a pretty accurate one. I think this is it. So this is Hajj. So Assalamu alaikum. I guess, okay, Abdullah left, Taiba, Assalamu alaikum, and Assalamu alaikum, dude. Okay. So I think this is pretty much it. This is what Rashad writes also. This is what we see in the Quran pretty much. So do the Tawaf, do the Safa Marwa, Mina, Arafat, Muzdafila, collect the pebbles. I don't know about the Jamara al-Aqaba. And then these three are correct. Okay, I guess these three are the. Okay, yeah, I don't know about that one. That's the maybe a fine detail that I'm not sure about. Is number 7 and number 11 in terms of which one. You know. I had a question though regarding what you say when you're going around the Kaaba. It says Labaik Allahumma Labaik. Is that the Arabic word Allahumma, or is this the Greek Allahumma, or the other Allahumma? Which Allahumma is this? Does anyone know?
I think the same Allahumma, right? Labbaik, Allahumma, labbaik.
Because Rashad translated that as my God.
Where?
In Appendix 15. Labaika Allahumma Labaik. So I'm now curious.
Yeah, it's O God, or yeah, I don't know. Yeah, the usual translation is O God when it's used in the Quran.
So is this the exact same phrase then as the Allahumma in the Quran?
Yeah, the same Allahumma in the Quran. Yes, the same word. Labbaik Allahumma labbaik. Yeah, it's the same word as in the Quran. Allahumma.
So this is the text of it. We can read it. So Labaika Allahumma Labaika La Sharika. Let's see. Hold on. Wait a second. Okay, that's the one. This is what Rashad put. So Labaika Allahumma Labaik. Labbaika, Allahumma labbaik, okay. Then labbaika la sharika laka labbaik. Labbaika la sharika laka labbaik. Okay, then they added, wait, no. Then what's the next part? The next part is the extra stuff or what? Hmm. Seems like that is what he considered the extra stuff. Yeah, I don't know about that one, to be honest with you. Maybe. I don't know.
It seems to me that there's a video that he was writing on the chalkboard that saying and stuff and talking about it.
Okay, let's take a look. Good point. All right, let me get it. See what he has.
When you tell them that God says that the Quran is complete.
Yeah, he got it. Okay, here we go. Got it.
Which means, my Lord, I respond.
Okay, let's get it. Let me get it for you guys. I'm sharing my screen. Okay, do you see my screen now? Okay. All right. What the heck? I literally got my phone yesterday. It's already scratched. Oh my gosh. It's crazy. I had to go get a case for it right today. Wow. Okay. All right, let's do this. Okay, so he accepts that this is not Allah. So then that has to be a typo in Appendix 15. Because he says our God cannot be Allah, right? So that makes sense.
لبيك اللهم لبيك. لبيك, I respond to your call. La means no, sharika means partner or idol. La sharika laka, with you. Labbaik, I respond to your call.
That's pretty clear.
Labbaika Allahumma labbaik. Labbaika la sharika laka labbaik. This is all you need, and you utter this statement, you memorize it and utter it all.
Okay, so he's dismissing the rest because they have more stuff, but the rest of the stuff isn't bad. I guess he's just saying it's an addition because the rest of it is just here, let me just paste it.
Time during Hajj, throughout Hajj, anytime you change direction, you climb a hill, down a hill, you meet friends, you say that Labbaika Allahumma labbaik, Labbaika la sharika laka labbaik. The details of the Hajj will be given to you by the guide that will be assigned to you as soon as you arrive in Saudi Arabia.
So the part that he's not recognizing is inna alhamda wa ni'mata laka wal mulka la sharika laka. So to you alone is all praise and all excellence, and to you is all sovereignty. There is no partner to you. Why do you guys think he removed that part? I don't see anything wrong with it.
Probably simplicity. I don't know.
Okay. Do you think it's possible that that part's not universally accepted?
Good
Because that's what
point.
he did. Because that's what he did for the contact prayers.
I would do it the way he does it. I don't know why.
I agree.
I don't know why.
with you. Yeah, I agree with you. Okay. That's it, basically. So the Shia version, okay, here. Yeah, I don't know actually. I'm not sure what's going on here. All right. Okay. So any other questions or comments? Does that all make sense? It kind of makes sense to me, I guess. We just have to look into whether or not we can just do the Hajj or we can go to the Muzdalifah outside of the Saudi government time, I guess. Maybe Mustafa has information. Mustafa, what's your position on the Labaika Ya Labaik? Labaika Allahumma Labaika.
It's like glorifying God. But what about it exactly?
What's the specific wordage used for the tawaf in your perspective?
Yeah, no, I can't comment on that right now.
Oh, we got on VC1 chat. So what we have agreed on is Labaika Allahumma Labaika Labaika La Sharika Laka Labaika.
Yeah, that would be my position too, but I haven't looked into it too deeply.
I have responded to you. My God, I have responded to you. I have responded to you, and I proclaim that there's no God besides God, you. I have responded to you.
Yeah, that sounds accurate.
Okay. We were just wondering about the extra. I was wondering about the extra stuff afterwards.
Well, it's like
The inna alhamda wa inni, that stuff.
yeah, alhamdulillah is like gratitude towards you and all these things, but I don't see a problem with it personally.
Okay.
Before we end this I missed the very beginning of the Quran study, and you guys read 191. I just want to emphasize something, and it's the expression that oppression is worse than murder. And it's my understanding that little phrase right there, it has weight in so many different areas from beating your wife to how you treat people that you are trying to control or something like that. Anything that you're doing, it affects how you. Let me see what's the other one I was trying to think of. How we do criminals, like the criminal justice system. That phrase right there is, I think, all-encompassing in the appendix of what Price or the criminal justice system, appendix number 37, and it bleeds into so many things.
Excellent. We talked about those verses. We talked about, oppression is worse than murder. We talked about persecution. and we talked about worshiping freely, practicing your religion. So, what is the? I don't understand what Happy Soul 19 is referring to.
I think she's typing more.
So she's saying this is exactly what I meant with my earlier comment of preference of Quranist over Sunnis. Yeah, I personally prefer Sunnis over Quranists because with the Sunnis, I have a lot of common positionings. I have a lot of commonality with the Sunnis. Right? We agree on the rituals, the practices, the common beliefs. We have a lot of stuff in common. With the Quranists, we don't have anything in common.
Naveed, so I understand where you're coming from, your perspective. Like what I meant was the fact that like I feel like with the Quranist, for the limited time that I had interacted with them, yes, they have all the cuckoo ideas and thoughts, but like they're very on their own little world. I mean, they live in their own crazy world, and they're not trying to take me or pressurize me into going into that world. And when I've interacted with Sunnis, I guess maybe it's my bad experience or whatever. It's like they're always trying to somehow passive aggressively or aggressively. I mean, my experience was aggressively, but like they try to have it their way. Otherwise, you're not even anything. You don't have any faith, you know, like it's they're the perfect, they're the only way. But I've noticed with Quranists, they'll say their piece and they'll walk away. It's like you take it. If you're not ready, then you know, may God guide you. It's like that kind of an attitude, and I find that's nowhere near being oppressed. The other behavior feels like very oppressive behavior. That's what I meant.
Yeah,
Very
so
good.
I've had the opposite experience. So one thing I want to say is one reason is maybe you feel that way or that's the way it is because they're in the minority still. So they don't have the same, they're not in control of much and they don't have like a massive following. That's one. But two, my experience has been the Quranists are very aggressive individuals. So if you, I mean, anyone can look on a different server that we know of and you can just look at how much I mean, Mustafa had to issue massive warnings because they're like cussing, large scale profanity, fighting, mocking. Like, I haven't even seen this level of bad behavior even among like traditionalists. There are some bad traditionalists, but generally they're more well behaved. And so yeah, with the Quranists, I just we're talking about Hajj right now. With the Quranists, there is no Hajj. Like we can't even talk about that. With the Sunnis, at least like we can agree on what Hajj is, the practices, the rituals. But the Quranists, we have nothing. And
Oh no, with as far as common ground, I feel like with them we have nothing. We are at zero, actually minus. They they're they're at minus. Like seriously, there's nothing to relate to. But yeah, I guess I was looking at it in a different angle.
yeah,
Could I just say something on that? Because I did identify what she was talking about. It's and I don't know somebody I think Diago one time talked about it, is the narcissism of close differences or something like that, or the narcissism of small things, something like that. But it's this thing where when you're in a group, I experience this even with submitters, where if you don't do this, you're going to hell. That kind of a thing. Where, as with the Quranist position, they're arguing on all of these things and they're less definitive on this stuff, and so the casting of judgments is perhaps it's postponed, but it isn't in your face. Is that some of what you're experiencing?
I mean, for me, I got their wrath, to be honest with you. Like, what I've noticed with Quranists on many occasions, they really don't like it when you call them out and like say they have like wrong beliefs. Like they get really upset. So
No, I tell them they're wrong all the time, man. It's not the problem. Yo, look, in terms of Sunnis, I think Sunnis are honestly the furthest away because how some of them, my own friends, say it would be halal to kill me. My blood is halal because why? I left Sunnah and I don't believe in Hadith. And not all of them, yeah, but they actually
Nice.
kill.
Nice.
all right. So
No, I think-
Diogo asked a question. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, I think the percentage of people who would be ready to kill you, there are many, I agree, but it's not 100% or even 90% or even 50%. And some people might say things in anger, but they may not really mean it. But that does not mean there are not enough people. There are crazies who would actually want to kill for leaving Sunnah and all that. But at the same time, if you look at, there is a significant portion or percentage of people who don't endorse that opinion, don't endorse that methodology, and they're also civil and respectful and well-mannered, and we can have discussion and disagree. And at least there's some common ground in terms of spirituality, in terms of calling God, in terms of worshiping God, in terms of our purpose in our life. They do what we consider to be shirk, in the sense they call on Muhammad in the salat, they do that. And we consider to be, to some extent, we consider to be shirk to uphold Hadith and Sunnah because it's not from God. But what the people today are fabricating is not any worse. It's probably far worse than what the Hadith narrators fabricated in the 1st or 2nd centuries, because it's completely absurd fabrications, right? And they're attributing it to God. So that's no different from Hadith and Sunnah. So if you use the Hadith and Sunnah argument, that's equally shirk, or probably even worse shirk. And then there is no common ground. Like spirituality is completely thrown out the window. God is completely thrown out the window. They're even ashamed to worship God. They're ashamed to say that worshiping God is a good thing. The ibadat is a key word in the Quran. Ibadat, like iyaka na'budu wa iyaka nasta'in. You do we worship, you do we ask for help. They are so ashamed of using the word worship. They change it to serve and something. They are ashamed of admitting that glorifying God is good, remembering God is good. That's why they make it something else, following closely or something. So I think there's a lot of differences, and I don't see how they're any better than Sunnis. And in terms of mannerisms, that's another key thing, right? Sunnis give a lot of emphasis on adab and akhlaq and how to behave and mannerisms and all behavior and things like that, which is also completely gone because it's just ridiculing, mocking, name calling, 4-letter words, 5-letter words, whatever. There's no low bar. So
Can I just comment on this? So Ahmed asked a question. He said mushriks are better than believers. Sunnis are better Quran alone, according to you. I disagree, and the reason is I don't consider the Quranists necessarily believers. So I think most of them fall into this verse. Maybe there's some sincere ones, just like there can be sincere Sunnis. But so 25:43 says the ego as a god. Have you seen the one whose god is his own ego? Will you be his advocate? So I think that's also a form of idol worship. We cannot just say this reminds me of like Sunnis or traditionalists who say, well, idol worship is just worshiping a statue, prostrating to a statue. Similarly, Quranists would say idol worship is just, worshiping Muhammad or the saints or whoever, the scholars. But the fact of the matter is, your own ego can be an idol and you worship it, and that's in the Quran, and that's your personal opinion. It becomes your ego, and that's a form of idol worship. So I don't consider any Quranist automatically as a believer. That's just not my position.
Because someone disagrees with you and thinks for himself, he's now considering his ego as his god.
I think there's levels of it. There's a spectrum of it, but generally what I can see when someone is very adamant about a very wrong perspective, then that's basically worshiping their ego.
I wouldn't limit it though. I mean, out of every faith, there can be believers. I mean, this is a thing.
Yeah.
Just because we're a submitter doesn't mean we've made it. It's we have a chance to make it. But there's such a large amount of purification process that happens, and I believe that from anything, like even the Quranists, I think there can be believers come out of the Quranists.
Yeah, it's not.
I agree with you.
Yeah.
I agree with you.
It's not a monolith. Obviously, there are many believers. Obviously, it's beyond a doubt, right? There are many people who are hadith skeptics who find the mentioning of Muhammad problematic, and they purified the salat and purified the shahada and worship God. They are believers as far as I'm concerned. And I've actually had a lot of complete solid. I have no difference. They're perfect believers. I'm talking about this other group of people who are basically fabricating hadith, and it's far worse than what the inherited hadith fabricated, right? So why would we say that one fabrication is wrong and the others? And every time I see this interact with them, my respect for Sunnis actually goes up a lot. Sunnis and Shias, we normally bash them so much, which is wrong in the first place. Just Jeff was saying, right? We should be humble. We shouldn't say we made it, and introspect on ourselves. And there would be believers even among Sunnis and Shias, and there are so many of them who are well mannered, who know how to interact, and we can disagree after a certain point. But whenever I interact with these extremist, weird conspiracists, Quranists, my respect for other faiths, not just Sunnis and Shias, but even Christians and all other faiths, just goes up. Why am I bashing these people when people who identify as part of my faith group are far worse than them? So
I think the mistake is that we automatically lump them to, like, anyone who says they follow Quran alone, we automatically just, assume that they're on like a good path.
What I would say is it's the tactic is a lot more nefarious, right? With a Sunni or a traditionalist, at least we have a common language and we have a common foundation. But when you twist and manipulate the language, and you don't even have that commonality, despite the fact of us both saying we follow the Quran, when you claim that the rules of Arabic, the vocabulary of Arabic, the whole heritage of the language is out the door, and we're supposed to take this fresh new kind of understanding. In essence, there is no common ground. What's interesting is in this verse, 25:43, the two verses in the Quran where it says, Rashad translates this, "Have you noted those whose God is their ego?" The word that's used here is hawa. Hawa is like someone's whims and desires and opinions. And when you think about it, it's like the whole concept of following the Quran is to say, I'm going to put my opinion aside and I'm going to see what God has to say about the matter. But what Quranists end up doing is they say, look, I have this opinion and I want to basically find a justification using the Quran for this opinion. It's not much different than the Sunnis where they say, look, I have this opinion, so I'm just going to keep searching and find that one hadith to justify this opinion. You want to have a temporary marriage? Go ahead. You find the hadith to justify that. You want to have child sex slaves? Go ahead. You find the hadith to justify that. But when it comes to Quranists, say, look, I want to eat pork. Okay, well, I'm going to, khanzir, I'm going to translate that as rotten meat. Oh, I want to do, consume intoxicants. Okay, I'm going to translate khamar as basically exclusive to wine, and it's only if it gets me to the point of intoxication while I'm doing my salat. So it's like you can always kind of twist and turn the verses. Realistically, at the end of the day, like my question for these hardcore Quranists is, what's even, at that point, why even have the Quran? Is there just a fascination for old books to go down this path? Because at that point, you could just say, look, it's all gibberish, and just become agnostic. But I don't know. I feel like inherently they have a cultural baggage towards the Quran, and they don't want to abandon that. And in essence, they found out a way where they can claim to be strict Quranists, live whatever kind of life they want. You know, they want to commit adultery, they want to commit homosexuality, they want to be intoxicated. They have every caveat to do every sin they can imagine. They feel righteous in that demeanor. You know, God says in the Quran, says the people that they go so far down the wrong path that they think their evil behavior is righteous.
Hey, dude, what is a person supposed to do if he sees a word in the Quran and it has more than one meaning?
God warns this is in the Quran, right? Surah 3, verse 7, that there are some, but it says the majority, the foundation of the Quran is straightforward. Meaning that even if you have a straightforward understanding of the Quran, there's going to be some edge cases. What this ends up happening, and it's true, you talk to the hardcore Quranists, the most straightforward basic verses, you have vastly different understandings. Like take the example of the YouTube guy, the Marvelous Quran, right? It's like he wants to talk about, you know, Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. He says, oh my God, you have to listen to 7 hours of lecture to understand what these words mean. But they've taken something that, again, universally is like anyone can read, you know, who knows even the slightest bit of Arabic and make sense of, and they've made it into something that's a, you know, this hodgepodge of just complicated mess.
But what is a person supposed to do if he finds himself in that situation?
Yeah, but you're talking about edge cases. You know, we should still have the foundation should be one and the same. If someone says, "Hey, look, I have an understanding to what Al-Tariq is," it's like, okay, we shouldn't put the same weight of confidence on that belief as we do in these foundational aspects of the Quran.
Okay, what is a person supposed to do with
Person is supposed to read the Quran. Simple as that. If you read any translation, doesn't matter which translation. I was actually looking at George Sale's translation recently. George Sale is like an enemy of the Quran. I think from the 16th or 17th century. He was an Orientalist, and his aim was to rubbish the Quran and show the Christians and the Westerners how bad the Quran is. So with that intent, he translated the Quran. And the key thing is that his translation is very accurate, but he with his prejudice, he read the wrong things into it, and he was kind of his inferences were off, but his translation is accurate. Even if we read that person's translation, George Sale's translation, the message of the Quran is very, very clear. It doesn't matter which translation you read, any translation you take, other than some gerunds, fabrications, or stuff, it's very clear. There's no need for any ambiguity, right? So it's only an insincere person who would intentionally twist the language and create these kind of false dichotomies where he's confused. Oh, what is salah? I don't know what it is. And
the B. Are there words in the Quran that you run into that have more than one meaning?
Absolutely. I mean, 3:7.
Let the B answer for now.
No, but just really quick, this is the difference between saying, look, there's some discussion regarding, again, specific words in the context. This is like distinguishing what's the difference. You go to the woke elite, and they'll tell you, look, the word man and woman doesn't think it means what you think it means, right? It's a spectrum. These are foundational aspects of the Quran that, in essence, they're taking a battering ram to. You know, the salat, the zakat, like these are, again, the very early stages of the Quran are discussing these things as if we know them. These people are coming with a bulldozer and saying none of this basically stands true. We have to reinterpret it, again, per our own vices.
Dude, if you run into a word with more than one meaning, what is it?
Can you give an example? Can you give an example?
No, but here, I mean, look, in Surah 21:14, God tells us exactly. It says, "Most exalted is God, the only true King. Do not rush into uttering the Quran before it is revealed to you, and say, 'My Lord, increase my knowledge.'" Right? That's one example.
My brother, what is a person supposed to do if he runs into a word?
The verses of the Quran are right there.
Can you give an example? Which verse are you referring to? Which verse is the person having a problem?
Let's take a look at khinzir, right? It can have a meaning rotten meat, or
No, it doesn't have any other meaning. Only a hypocrite would say that it has another meaning. Somebody who wants to disobey God will create another. There is no meaning. There is no second meaning. Ask any Arab, look at any Arab dictionary. There is no second meaning. This is exactly what you're talking about. There is no need for any. The God says, we hear and we obey. That's what the believers do. When the believer hears, do not eat the meat of the pig. Believer says we hear and we obey, no questions asked.
So the word khinzir cannot mean rotten meat.
It cannot mean. It does not mean. Simple as that.
Dude, would you agree with that?
I do. I mean, the concept is like, look, how many hundreds of people have translated the Quran? All when it comes to these foundational things is one and the same. But it wasn't until this like latest Quranist movement where all of a sudden they've twisted and turned every single word of the Quran to something again. They say, look, to understand what this one word means, we're going to have to discuss 7 hours of lecture. It's like, no, the majority of the Quran is straightforward. It's easy to understand. You know, when you make it into this like a gobbledygook of saying, you know, as if this is some like language that no one has ever come across, yeah, you're going to come up with all kinds of nonsense. And even something as straightforward as khanzir, where everyone understands that this is the context, the meat of pigs, it's going to be something that's confusing.
And what you said, dude, earlier, right? Why it is literally the whole religion is tossed into the trash can, right? And the question was why? Why do they do this? And I have a theory that is, if we see generally there's an anti-traditionalist and there's an element of Islamophobia everywhere, and people and that's also prevalent within the Muslim community. Also, there's a backlash against conservative, the repression that is going on for so many centuries, right? And the way it takes effect is there's this ex-Muslim community who bash Sunnis and Shias, the traditional Muslims, but they don't have any moral any leanings for doing that. They don't have any support. So the Quranist, I believe, they're just tapping into that and using the Quran as a weapon to beat the Sunnis and Shias in the head. That's all that says. So whatever belief they have, even if it goes explicitly against the Quran, they bash it up. Oh, these primitive people, they don't eat pork. They don't eat pork. This thing. There's no reason. That's so stupid. Why can't we eat pork? It's this thing, that thing. So they question every single thing. Worshipping God, they have a problem with that. What is the point of worshipping God? Yesterday I was discussing with somebody who's asking, why should we worship God? God does not need our worship. Right? Why should we glorify God? God does not need our glorification. So that's the argument that's being made, even though it's explicitly said in the Quran, God does not need it. We need it for our own souls. So when, for example, when they heard ibadah, that's okay. That's not a mistranslation. That's one of the, probably the closest. They emphasize that it does not mean worship. That is bad. That is wrong, right? Ibadah, the primary meaning when it comes to God is worship. It can also mean serve, but they take ibadah completely out. They throw out ibadah. We cannot worship God, and they make it only serve, and then the serve is, I don't know, whatever that is. But literally, the whole everything in the religion has been thrown off. If there's nothing left, right? If you can eat pork and be promiscuous and drink and even you said they don't drink except for approaching Salah, but there's no Salah anymore, right? Salah is doing whatever, right? And literally there's nothing left anymore. And the only thing that unites them is, because there's nothing left to do, there's nothing to discuss. The only thing that unites them is bashing Sunnis and Shias, and that's it. The Quran is a weapon for that, and they keep making mockery. That's 24/7. There's nothing else that I see, so...
You know, a part of it, I think, is explained in the whole Sajin Eliyin concept, the idea that God is not guiding everyone. So therefore, the multiple meaning ones, people extract what they want, maybe even straightforward ones. There's an intent, there's a sincerity aspect to it that really can't be explained by just logical analysis. And I think that's part of the problem when we go into discussing this with the Quranists, because that's a large, what your understanding is according to your heart.
So, what is this? Was Ahmed's questions clarified? Ahmed, can you reiterate your question? And maybe I can try to answer it, inshallah, if it hasn't been addressed properly.
If someone runs into a word with more than one meaning in the Quran, what is he supposed to do?
Yeah, so I think that for us, obviously us on the server, or many of us, we have a clarifying messenger, and we take We take the explanation and understanding of the messenger over
What
personal
would a
opinion.
person have needed to do prior to the messenger?
And yeah, they pray to God and do their best. That's it.
They would have no idea.
Potentially, maybe they would have an idea. I don't know. I mean, you have a couple options. You examine the options. We have examples now where the messenger hasn't necessarily verified something, and it's just you look at the options and you take it. But it depends on what we're talking about. We're talking about just like random topics or like fundamental practices or principles or beliefs or what? Can you have an example, or is this just hypothetical?
He gave the example of Khinzir. That's the example he was discussing.
Yeah, so that's not even disputed. Who disputes that it's a pig?
Hold on, I have a word for you, Ahmed. The word jinah. Okay, it's used one time to mean blame, and one time to bring people close to you, and things like that.
This is zina. I didn't get the word, Mustafa. Which
Jinah,
word is it?
wing, like wing of a bird.
Okay, is there a commandment associated with it, or is there a specific? Is there a dispute?
It's asking for a word that's being used in the Quran to mean different things, and there is.
Oh, obviously. So even he gave the example, or Dude gave the example earlier of at-tariq, right? We can have a different understanding of it. Is something? Does it affect any commandment, or I actually don't even know.
The idea that the word, this whole problem spans from the idea is one word has one meaning, and we apply it to all the verses. So if we can find any verse that, like for example, the eating of your brother's money, and because God used the word eating in that verse, like how do you eat money? So the word eating just means to consume. So now every instance of the word eating, like when it tells you
it's a good example.
Eat and drink till the crack of dawn, they don't see it as eating, they see it as consuming the Quran. So the problem stems from like one word meaning the same thing across the whole Quran. And like Peter earlier said, the word hawa, he's following his hawa, right? His wind, how it translates into like his desire, his ego, or whatever. And wind means wind, it doesn't mean anything else. But that's how it's understood.
So the bigger question is, why should we care? Because in the end, different people are going to read the scripture differently and have their own thing. And obviously, certain methodologies and approaches will not be compatible with each other. As Jude was saying, beyond a certain point, there's no common ground that we cannot discuss. So why don't we let everybody be free to do what they want? And within forums that have some common ground, meet and kind of race towards righteousness. I think there are a few verses that say that, right? Why can't? Is that an option?
What I would say is it's obviously no compulsion on religion. Everyone's free, but at the same time, it's worth putting these arguments up front. Because realistically, you're seeing less and less people going into traditional Islam because of just the blatant, nonsense that's in there. And then all of a sudden they hear about Quranism, and in essence, it's funneling in kind of converts and people who are moving away from the traditional understanding. The aspect is on day one, you're saying, okay, there's some flexibility to the interpretation. And, again, they take a lot of these arguments that were first brought by Rashad, and they start that as kind of the gateway. It's like any other conspiracy theory where it just keeps you deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper, that before, after a short amount of time, all of a sudden, again, there is the foundation has been completely wrecked. And I think for that sake, it's worth, again, shining a light on this and showing that, in essence, like, look, this path you're going down is basically, on part of like QAnon. Where at the beginning, there's like legitimate conspiracies that everyone kind of agrees, everyone acknowledges, right? Jeffrey Epstein didn't kill himself. Then you keep going down that path, and you're like, oh, okay, JFK actually wasn't assassinated. He's going to come back to Dallas, Texas, and go into the grassy knoll, and he's going to appear. And it's kind of that same path where it's like they start off with morsels of truth, Then where they take people is in such crazy conspiracy theories that in essence it's like it just destroys this whole foundation of, truth versus falsehood. I think it's not something that in essence we should just like disregard. It's worth taking these arguments head on and really shining a spotlight on the shortcomings of kind of where this path leads.
Okay, that's a good point. So I think in that case, it may not be worth having this debate because they're pretty close-minded. If it's for the general population, it's probably like a YouTube video or something that who's interested, whoever has access to these theories has also access to something parallel that exposes it, and then leave it at that, and then we move on with our life and read the Quran. There's so much wisdom in the Quran. It's not worth spending so much time and energy rebutting this.
Yeah, regarding to Happy Souls comment, yeah, absolutely. I mean, I consider if I was to leave, like let's say for instance, I just got heard about the religion, and I see the nonsense in traditionalism. Quranism, it sounds very safe, right? It doesn't require the adoption of another messenger. It's basically pointing out all the flaws in traditional Islam. It seems like the less risky path to go down. But the reality is, it's just paved in this way to make it look very desirable. The end outcome is just, it's chaos. And I think it's worth for the individuals who've kind of like seen this where this leads to. And again, we have 30 years of history for this, to just like show people, say, look, this is where you start, this is where you go, and this is where you end. Just for the sake of kind of, again, not having someone duped in, because the thing that irritates me the most, and I've seen this in countries like Iran's like a perfect example. You had this super open kind of a liberal society, very free, to all of a sudden becoming, the most authoritarian, despised nation on the planet. And it just happened because they basically followed these people blindly. And it's one of those things, if people knew, like if you could show them, hey, this is your future in 30 years, maybe they would have thought twice before they brought these, terrible human beings back into power.
Yeah, but I think the downside is once you're down through, they don't see the big picture after some point. And then once they go down this path, it as you said, it just one thing leads to another. I think there are a couple of people who have gone through this path and come back, and they've actually converted to Sunnism, who have documented. One is a person called Jake Brancatella. The other is a person called, he goes by the name Ben Ikra. I think that's probably his acquired name after conversion to Islam. And they kind of, especially Jake, he talks in detail about this conspiracy minds and the methodology itself. Like he says he was praying 3 times or whatever, but his methodology was, this thing is not in the Quran, so I need to find it. And then he went and talked to some group. And one by one, everything went away, and until he snapped, and he was just honest to himself, and he said, "I can't do this anymore." And he tried to find out another path, and he thought maybe Sunnism is more reasonable, and he switched to that. But this is addicting in a sense. Just beyond this, he said that after one stage, he had stopped praying. Yeah, and there's another guy who interviews him. He said, "But did you think about God? Did you pray to God?" He said the times for prayer came and went. Initially, it was in the back of his mind. Oh, there's a prayer time, but he didn't bother. And at one point, he stopped thinking about God completely. And then all that was left was arguing and arguing and arguing. That's it. Take the Quran, find somebody to argue with, fight with them, and that whole life became that. So. Until he snapped out of it. So, but that's just a few people. But in general, it's addictive, and it's like probably anything else, like gambling. It becomes very compulsive, and they are stuck in this thing, and they find the next conspiracy to find and next thing to bash traditionalists about. It becomes that vicious loop.
Get a dopamine rush thinking that at any moment you're going to reveal another grand conspiracy. You know, it's like it's just, and it gets more and more outlandish. And I have a couple close friends who've really gone deep into the, you know, the political conspiracies. You can tell each time you talk with them, they have some other, you know, grand new theory about some cabal, some, you know, background shady dealings, you know, some lizard people, that in essence you can tell they get a rush from it each time. That's the thing, is like, you know, they read the Quran looking for the most kind of like outlandish interpretations. And then they go out and they start, you know, proselytizing this. I know I gave this example, but I thought it's like this, I felt like was the apex of just lunacy. Was a lady was saying, again, we shouldn't use the term Allah because this is connected with Allat, which is an idol in the Quran. Just like, wow, you guys went like full circle to the sense of like Allah is the only name of God that we should be using. So some people, again, arguing that we shouldn't even use that. And I was like, well, what do we use? You know? It's that, yeah, you're right. It's that rush you get from each time, you know, you figured out something that no one else in the world knows, and you're the only one who has figured out this information. There's a rush that comes with it.
Yeah, you know, the components of what is idol worship or what is ego worship, not components, or the various types. It seems like there's different types. Like, for example, Sunni, what are they doing? Well, a lot of them, they're accepting hadith, and also they have this idea of a human being being able to benefit you in some. They're so holy or something that they've transcended to a different state. Perhaps that's in there too. It, as opposed to the Quranist, which is, it's none of that. It's strictly the individual. Aha, I got it. Or itself. I think you described it there. How, whatever word you would put on what you just described, and there's other versions of thinking that absolutely, this person can help me. You know, I'd be curious to see the description of the different types. You know what I mean? Why would it be interesting? It would be interesting because to deal with the individuals, you see what is their issue. You know, where are they tripping? That, in a sense.
If you think about this psychologically, there's two character traits that are opposite of one another. One is agreeableness, the other one is disagreeableness. And I would say, you know, the vanguards of the movements are always the most disagreeable people, because they are ones who don't. The fact that the crowd is going one way, they're going to take go the other way, just in spite of the crowd. And those are always kind of the first kind of individuals to foray into some new understanding. But then eventually, what ends up following are the ones who, again, they're just the most agreeable. Individuals that, again, can be swayed very easily towards one understanding or one perception or one cause or one movement. And I feel like we're getting in that stage. A lot of the people who are gravitating towards this, ones in essence, you know, the first cohort were just the people who are looking just for any kind of controversial understanding because they just want to be counterculture. But then the next cohort are going to be the individuals who, in essence, like, oh wow, you know, they're mesmerized by their how eloquent they are and how they, you know, they have all these like deep esoteric understandings. I like, if you guys ever get a chance to listen to the Marvelous Quran, it is the most marvelous gobbledygook of just like silliness, but it sounds so you know, alluring. It's like, wow, dude, this guy really gets it. And then you're like, you take a step back and you're like, what's he actually saying? It's like, this is ridiculous. But it has that certain allure that pulls in people. Again, it's like, here's secret information that no one else knows. Once you watch my, you know, 10 hours of video, you will be in on this insight as well.
Yeah, so the other aspect is the disconnect with the Quran itself. And everybody, including myself, when we grew up, I had a disconnect, I should say we, but I had a disconnect with the Quran. And it was only read in Arabic, and I didn't know what the Quran said. And even after we switch, if all we are replacing is Hadith and Sunnah, with these YouTube scholars and their theories, that's defeating the purpose. At best, what I might be doing is confirming or checking that the person, he used some word, and I check it in the Quran, it's there. Then I go to corpus and go into the root, and he says it means something else in some other verse, the word, oh, that's there. And then I go to the lexicon and check, oh, that's there, I'm impressed, and I just take it. So that's again disconnected with the Quran, and we're taking bits and pieces from different videos and websites, and these YouTube scholars are giving talks, that's it. So it's Quran plus articles plus videos. That's the model. And the only way around is to actually be connected with the Quran and read it cover to cover. That's the only way to make the Quran challenge our prejudices, and not some weird wacko translation, but any translation. Even if you take George Sale, I keep mentioning George Sale because he was the ultra extreme enemy of the Quran. Even his translation is the raw text itself is very authentic. Or even Arthur Arbery, who was a non-Muslim but an academic Arab linguist, a scholar of Arabic who translated the Quran. Anybody's translation, if we keep reading cover to cover, we are in touch with the Quran and study with like-minded people with a study where there's no agenda, where you read the Quran to tell you what you need to know, rather than to test some conspiracy theory into the Quran, right? So go without anything, just read it, and it just makes natural sense. And if you know what is there and what it's saying, then it becomes obvious what it's not saying. But if we are disconnected from the Quran and have no practice of a cover-to-cover reading, and all we have access to is these videos, day and night bombarded with these videos, then we're going to pick and choose from those.
There's a note from a Happy Soul in a VC1 if you want to address that.
An example I can think of is the word hadith has always been translated with different wordings, which kept me in the blind regarding what it was talking about. You're saying that hadith, we didn't think that hadith could also be referring to hadith itself, the prophetic value, because of the fact that it was translated. Is that what Happy Soul is saying?
No, I meant like, you know how God refers to it as his words, right? Like the word of God or the Quran itself, or the ayahs or the verses. So like growing up at least when I started to read the translation, I think the translations always refer to it as like storytelling, and there's like other words that was used in place of hadith,
Right.
whereas Rashad used the word hadith itself,
I
and
agree,
it made it more clear for me to understand.
Absolutely. I'm not saying that Rashad's translation did not clarify with very excruciatingly high level of clarity on what the message should be. I'm not saying that. Once you have it, once you know it, I'm saying that it doesn't matter. Any other translation we read, also it's obvious. And we know the verses where the word hadith is mentioned, right? And we can check it. So I don't deny that. I'm just saying that and also there's another problem also associated with that, right? So when Rashad, he left the word hadith and translated, and we could get the benefit of understanding the prophetic value and the absurdity of following hadith when the Quran itself exposes hadith. But since then, the Quranist movement has used the translation and restricted the meaning only to hadith that was transmitted, hadith of Prophet Muhammad, or attributed to Prophet Muhammad, which is not right? Which is also inaccurate. It actually refers to any hadith. So, from my understanding, for example, and I know that most of the people on the server disagree, writings from Rashad are technically hadith, even though whatever we can verify with the Quran, we can accept. And all these videos that we talked about that are being made by these people, they're also hadith. The 7-hour video that dude was referring to, that's 7 hours of hadith because it's hadith ba'dallahi wa ayatihi. So we know that we need to reject the traditional hadith and sunnah based on the prophetic value of how the word sunnah is used and how the word hadith is used, but we should also be aware that it has a general meaning of any narration, anything other than the Quran, so that we are aware that when people show us these 7-hour videos, we know that that's also extra Quranic. We don't fall into the trap just because the video, the caption says Quran alone, and he's talking 7 hours of something else. That's not Quran alone. That is something else, right? So that's also hadith. Right?
Wait, the B, I have a question. Like, now I'm a little confused about what you were just saying, because earlier I think I understood it differently what you were saying. So you're saying there is other things, other materials that can be called hadith besides the Quran, and like how did you come to that conclusion? Because thank God, like I know how to read Arabic. So like when I was looking into the translation of Rashad's, I saw God put those verses, like it does have the word hadith in it, and it made more sense to me that he's referring to his words. But how do you talk about general information to be hadith? Like how did you come to that conclusion?
So the word hadith just means saying or narration. That's all it means, right? When God says in which hadith besides God and his verses will they believe, that means in which narration or which saying will they believe in other than God and his verses. And it obviously refers to hadith that's been narrated and attributed to Prophet Muhammad. But if somebody comes and tells me that the Quran, the Salat is nothing but reading the Quran, the messenger read the Quran to the followers, and that's what Salat is, and there's no substantiation, it's just pure speculation. And he says he got it from the Quran and he's attributing it to God. That's literally hadith because it's his saying, that person is saying, right? So in the general sense, it's not just the hadith attributed to Prophet Muhammad that needs to be rejected, but also all of the hadith that we are hearing these days that is not verifiable in the Quran and being attributed to God. All that, right? Everything that's a saying that's not, there's only one source of divine guidance, which is the Quran. And if there's any other source that people say is a source of guidance, that would be hadith, right?
So as long as it is like narration that's goes back to or is combined to God, that's what is considered hadith. So like I'm sorry, I don't mean to sound like mocking or anything. Like I'm just thinking, if someone takes a cooking book and says this is hadith, can that be hadith? Or
No,
it has
that's
to
okay. That is perfectly fine because a cooking book is not scripture attributed to God. So that is fine. It's just teaching us how to cook,
Oh,
right?
okay. So yeah, that's what I was trying to understand. So it has to be attributed to God in order
Right.
to.
Yeah. If somebody tells me that salah means following closely like a horse or something and attributes that to God, and you think that's what the Quran is actually saying, that's the hadith then, because that's not what the Quran is saying, and that's somebody's speculation. And he's attributing it to God, right?
So God forgive me, I guess I've had conversations with traditionals and I mean the traditional Muslims out there, and like when it came to the word hadith, I did use this example because I guess I didn't understand that it was any narration that's attributed to God. I literally took only the Quran as the hadith or God's verses. So I did use the example like, well, you guys take any book, so it could be like a cooking book, and say this is hadith, and I don't follow that because I mean I was accused of a person who's not following hadith, so therefore I'm a kafir or something like that. So,
Right.
yeah. Anyways,
Yeah, so
Thank
the
you for
Quran describes itself as hadith, right? In Surah 39, it's the best hadith. And if you combine that with in which hadith do you believe in besides God and His verses, that excludes the possibility of following any other hadith as a source of revelation, obviously. It's not referring to, I read a newspaper report that Biden said something, that's not referring to that, right? It's referring
yeah,
to
exactly.
equivalent to.
I think my conclusion came to that understanding only because of the multiple verses that God, uses in the Quran, and it all kind of
Yes.
refers to that one source.
Right, and mine too, for that matter. And it became clear only after reading Rashad's translation, and not his translation. I think his book, Quran, Hadith, and Islam, where he puts the same verses in that. That's the time when it became clear to me too. Yeah.
I think it's important to emphasize or point out what makes hadith bad, what makes it wrong. And I think that at the essence of it, it's you can't confirm it. You can't. It's not a verifiable chain. There's nothing verifiable about it all. For example, if I go to Dr. Khalifa's translation of the Quran, I can tell you his views on adultery. I can tell you because it's so well documented. And there are people who will say that, well, you can't watch the videos, you can't read the appendices. And I'm saying that if it's documentation is the issue here, that you can't say it was Muhammad's did this because the documentation, there's absolutely no validity to the chain of documentation. But with Dr. Khalifa's work, we have a lot of documentation. And
can I comment on that?
Yeah.
So I don't think the issue is just documentation. I agree that it is an aspect of it. The problem is that the hadith is the source of law outside the Quran. So in the hadith, it says penal codes against or in opposition or differing from the Quran. That is the fundamental issue that we have in it, is that I don't see Rashad's teachings as being a religious authority or religious laws outside the Quran. And I always bring this up. If you have religious laws outside the Quran by Rashad, I'd like to see it because I haven't seen any. The religious authority is only in the Quran, and his explanations and teachings is just telling us what the Quran says. That's it. There is nothing external to the Quran involved here.
Good point.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah, go ahead, please.
So if if for example something maybe I can only think of the grapefruit food, right? Like if you don't really accept some parts of it or you don't see it, is there anything wrong with that? Like are you compelled to just accept it and believe in it? That happened. Is it sinful to not?
I think that's our obligation, is to just accept teachings from a messenger without the slightest hesitation. I think that's just what is obliged of us. So the example I give is appendix, Appendix 3, he talks about this. I use this a lot. I'm infamous, I guess. But he brings a bunch of verses, and then he says, let's go. Let me put it here. Mercy from God, 21:107. Okay, I'm just pasting it here, inshallah. So, let me just read it. I know I read it a lot, but whatever. All right, so mercy from God, 21:107. When the believers are faced with a problem, they develop a number of possible solutions. This invariably leads to considerable bickering, disunity, and disarray. And this is an extreme example of this, obviously, is the Quranist movement, right? Then it says, we learn from 2:151, 3:164, and 21:107 that it is but mercy from God that He sent to us messengers to provide the final solutions to our problems. We learn from 42:51 that God sends His messengers to communicate with us and to disseminate new information. Hence the strong injunction in 465 and 80 to accept without the slightest hesitation the teachings delivered to us through God's messengers. I just accept the teachings, all of it. I just take it, because what's the point of like opposing it or objecting it or insisting on something else? Why would I do that? I just take it. It's just my ego. It's like, okay, what am I going to say? Okay, he's wrong. So then what? What am I achieving by doing that? I just don't see it. Does that answer your question, Taiba?
Yeah, I was kind of talking about every detail of the Great Feud, like this happened and then this happened and then that happened. If I feel like I cannot see it in the Quran, like I was wondering if I had to like just believe it, like, okay, well, since he's saying
Think
so,
about it
so
like
I
this.
just take it.
On the day of judgment, you think God is going to punish you for believing, just the teachings that the messenger brought? And he talks about this. He said, okay, Rashad, well, what if you just made a mistake? Okay, he says, you know what? And he's talking about like stuff that has to do with our salvation. The details of the Great Feud don't, but let's just assume they did. Okay, so why do you believe in age of 40 and this and that, whatever? Let's just assume for the sake of argument, okay, Rashad was wrong, age of 40, it's actually not really age of responsibility, something like that, right? Say on the day of judgment, this is God's messenger, you say, God, I just believe your messenger. God's not going to punish you for believing the messenger and trusting the messenger. That's it. There's nothing to lose from that. There's nothing you're not going to be in a bad position or just saying, okay, I trusted your messenger. God's not going to punish you. And that's the end of it. There's no issue here. There's no problem. We create problems for ourselves. We overcomplicate it, because God doesn't hold us to that standard.
There's a good.
Kind of like,
I'm sorry, Ty, but I was going to say audio number 51. He talks exactly to your question, and it's about an hour in or so. But he's actually, I literally read it for you right here. But if you listen to it, he'll tell you exactly the answer to the question you want.
What audio?
51, about 1 hour in.
Okay. Yeah, I was just thinking, like, kind of obliged to not take anything we can't get from the Quran, and like if there's details of the Great Feud that isn't in the Quran, can I just say, oh, the messenger told me, it's not my fault? But at the same time, I can't take anything that's not in the Quran, right?
There's a verse.
The messenger is in the Quran. That's my whole point of the content that I just put for you. Is trusting the messenger is in the Quran. He says he shall be obeyed and trusted. 81, was it 81:21? He shall be obeyed and trusted. When you trust someone, how do you trust someone on anything, right? You trust someone by assuming that they're going to give you correct information. That means you don't need to verify that information independently. Does that make sense? That's the whole point of trusting. If you have to verify everything that they say, then what's the point of trusting them? It doesn't achieve anything. There's no trust involved. You can only trust when you have to assume certain things. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I see what you're saying. Like, yeah.
Taiba, there's a verse in the Quran. I'm trying to find it at the moment. I can't do two things at once. Maybe somebody else will find it, where it's literally that the messenger is to deliver the message, and we are to obey the messenger. And we're not responsible for whether he delivered it correctly. We're responsible for obeying the message. That's the thing. Now, so when Dr. Khalifa talks about it, he's saying, look, you save yourself a lot of time and energy if you just hear and obey. He said you can, you hear it, you say it's true, okay, I obey. He said after that, you can question it. You can question, well, how does that work? But I accept it.
Yeah,
I accept
exactly.
that after the age of 40, it's true. I accept after the
Exactly.
age of 40, but you can't, you figure it out afterwards, but you accept it first.
Exactly. I agree with Jeff 100%. And this gets to what Ahmed is asking about or what he's saying. He's saying Quran is fully detailed. I agree. He's saying it's the only thing you need. Okay. Make it simple. He's portraying it as simple, but the process that he's actually endorsing and promoting is actually the opposite of simplicity, because then you have to spend 50 years becoming a scholar of the Arabic language and still end up with nothing. How is that a simple process? These guys are debating what the word pig means, which was never disputed by anyone. Well, they'll spend 10 hours on it. How many hours did we debate Salat yesterday? We have to debate wudu. How is this a simple process? It's not a simple process. They've destroyed everything. And yet they all claim to be following the scripture alone, Quran alone. So this shows you that that process is a flawed, broken, and a unusable system.
Don't idolize.
sounds nice.
Don't idolize no man. Don't follow no man blindly. Think for yourself. As a result, there will be disagreements. That's just how it is.
Wait. Hold on. Let's look at the verse. You just made a claim. Let's look at a verse. Now you're making a claim about idolization. Now let's look at the verse, because your claim is invalid. Let's look at the verse. 460. Let me get it. 465. Oops. Hold on.
You said anything about researching the Arabic language your whole life anyway. You don't need
Oh,
to
that's
be
what
an
they're
Arab to
doing.
understand the
Oh,
Quran.
that's exactly what they're doing, and they're just getting worse and worse at it. So this is about killing your ego. How are you killing your ego if you refuse to obey a messenger? What does that have to do with idol worship? Nothing. 464, unquestioning submission. Quality of the true believers. We did not send any messenger except to be obeyed in accordance with God's will. That's the end of it. So you're saying if you obey the messenger, you're worshiping him? So
I
let me ask
say,
you this. When the angels prostrated to Adam, did they worship Adam?
I say the Quran is all you need. That's all I say.
Yeah, the Quran is all you need. So how do you
Mhm.
access the Quran? By using the Quranist methodology?
You read it.
Yeah, like what the Quranist methodology, right? That's what you're promoting. So that server is a successful approach. What we were supposed to do, that 6-hour discussion yesterday, that's what you're promoting. That's the correct approach according to you. That's
Review
not
the-
God's religion. That's a
review-
flawed religion.
review-
That's not even a
review-
religion. It's broken.
Review the verses of God and come to
Yeah,
your conclusion.
that's what we
of
did
course.
yesterday. Yeah, we did that yesterday. That's what you're promoting, right?
Think for yourself, 100%.
Yeah, think for yourself. So everyone there was thinking for themselves. So that's what you're
Mhm.
promoting.
Yeah,
Just
I
utter nonsense.
promote thinking for yourself. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, utter nonsense, broken religion, removal of practices, conspiracy theories, distorting the meanings of words. That's what you consider quote unquote logic and thinking for yourself. That's a logical conclusion, and where this approach is taking you.
See the
100%.
amount of accusations you're making. Now let's hear the solutions for
What's
it.
the accusation?
What should-
Wait.
What should we do instead?
I just told you, God sent a clarifying messenger. We obey and we trust him. We're done with this. We don't have to have a 6-hour debate on the meaning of the word pig. This is ridiculous.
The messenger came about 30, 40 years ago, right?
Yeah.
What would a person have needed to do before then?
They just prayed to God to be saved, and if God willed, He saved them. That's it.
My bro, give us a solution. Since you're so hell bent and accusing others, let's hear a solution for it. If we had no
I'm
messenger,
giving you a solution. You're asking for a retroactive solution. That's what you're asking for? A retroactive solution? You have the solution right now. You refuse to uphold it. Then you're concerned about people from 100 years ago.
How many years has the Quran been around for?
Forget about it. Forget about the people of the past. This is exactly.
Can I interject just mine? So I think it does not have to be black or white. There can be other. It's like two scenarios that are being presented, and if we say that we need a clarifying messenger, that's the only way to understand the Quran. That's not for me personally, and I think I have evidence. I don't, because we have had this argument so many times. That's the only reason I'm not going into it over and over. But the message is clear to me, and not only through Rashad, but also messengers after him, that the Quran is the only source. It's clear, it is simple, and whatever the Quran is doing, it's not a counter example to the Quran is still clear. Pig is pig. There's no need to debate about it, right? Salah is salah. Just hear and obey. There's no need to debate about it. So I think what happens when we read, if you look at traditional hadith and sunnah, they're disobeying what is explicit in the Quran, what is clear in the Quran, that anybody reading their own traditionalist translations, even, it's very, very, very clear, right? That for example, the masajid belong to Allah, belong to God, do not call upon anyone with him therein. It's a very simple commandment. No matter which translation you read, you'll see the same thing. And that's what is being disobeyed, right? So, or when God alone is mentioned, the hearts of those who do not believe in the hereafter shrink with aversion, and when others are mentioned, they rejoice. This is a behavior that I've experienced myself. It's in the Quran. It's there in any translation. Sometimes they put add word without other gods or something in brackets, but it's clear that's added. If you take it out, we know what the verse is saying. So the point is that the Quran is very, very clear and it's simple. And I agree with you, Naveed, that the method that it's not 6 hours. I think it's more like 24 hours. 6 hours is probably what you and me spent there. That's not simple at all. If we are saying that we need to reinvent the Arabic language, that's not simple. I agree with that. But that does not mean that the clarifying messenger is what made the Quran simple. The Quran was simple to begin with. Mm-hmm. The clarifying messenger only pointed out that, hey, the Quran is simple. All you had to do is follow it.
Yeah, let me ask you a question.
What's that?
Let me ask you a question in that case.
Yeah.
Since you don't regard the messenger as necessary to make the Quran clear, if we do, I want to double down on the question I asked you earlier.
Okay.
Which is if we run into a verse or a word which has more than one meaning, what are we supposed to do?
Okay, if it's the example of khinzir, that's a bad example because there is only one meaning. It's very clear. My answer is this, right? Nobody in history has disputed the meaning of the word khinzir. And if somebody is disputing it now, as far as I'm concerned, that person is a hypocrite who does not want to obey the message of God. That's the only reason. So that's a very bad example, right? So
are you aware of words? Are you aware of words which have more than one meaning?
So Dude, for example, a little while earlier gave the example of At-Tariq in the Surah, the Night Visitor. Mm-hmm. And there is a suggestion that it can also refer to a pulsar. Base, it's like a beating star more than a night star. So beating star. So what is the beating star? It can be a pulsar, something like that. But if you give me specific examples, we can talk about it. For most of the first of all,
this example,
God says that the Quran is simple, it is clear, it is fully detailed. We don't need if it's fully detailed, we don't need Mavericks hadith, 24-hour hadith, right?
Or provide the answer for Tariq. Provide the answer for that, please. Provide the answer for Tariq, I think the word was you said.
Okay, so Tariq could mean a pulsar. So that's the theory, right? Now, it doesn't affect our salvation at all. It's not a muhkam verse. It's not a law-giving verse. Whether we follow it or not, whether we agree with it or not, it's not going to affect our salvation one way or another, right? So the muhkam verses are very, very clear. The commandments we need to follow, very clear. Observe the salat, give the zakat, speak the truth, stand up for justice, right? And fast during the Ramadan is coming up in 10 days. Fast when who witnesses the
so we're unsure, and it doesn't matter that
that's
we're unsure.
That's what I'm saying. So the Quran is very clear. My point to Naveed was, or I'm going to clarify, is you don't need to make this false dichotomy that this even that answers the question of 30 years before. Nobody in history has been unsure of when Ramadan is, and the only people who are unsure are the hypocrites who don't want to do it. That's how I see it, right? So there is no reason to be unsure of what Ramadan is. There is no reason to be unsure of what Siyam is. There is no reason to be unsure of what Ibadah is. There is no reason to be unsure of what Salah is. It's all clear. It's very simple, clear Arabic. So just because, that's all I'm trying to say. We don't have to say that the solution is that you have to blindly follow everything that the messenger said, because there we have a bunch of conspiracy theorists who are cooking up the worst conspiracy theories. That even if you go by like any Sunni will understand or a Shia will this is just common sense, right? Ramadan is not a fabricated month. Siyam is not a fabricated practice. Salah is not a fabricated practice. It's a conspiracy theory that begs an explanation. If we see, it's very clear that if you forget about scripture, forget about what the Quran says, just from a historical perspective, that everybody knows, every person knows, every secular history, forget about Muslims or listening, everybody knows, right, that this is an inherited practice. Nobody invented this. Muhammad was doing the salah during his lifetime. And this is like a mass transmitted practice. It's not even like reading the Quran. At that time, not everybody read the Quran because it was in some mushafs. Not everybody had access to it, but everybody was doing the salah. Like it's in every man, woman, and child, grandfather, grandmother, grandson, every person. It's like this thing, right? And literally across sects, it doesn't matter which sect it is, no matter what they fought out of each other. Aisha and Ali fought, Muawiyah and Ali fought. They were at each other's throats, and we had like Ibadis, which are a completely different sect, and Shias and Sunnis and Zaidis and everything. But everybody knew how to pray, and there is no conspiracy that centuries after the death of the Prophet, suddenly one guy said, okay, let's invent a new ritual. And everybody, all these sects suddenly agreed and made it mass transmitted. There is no evidence. There is no. Let me finish, Ahmed. There is no evidence of such a thing. It's irrational. It's illogical. It's the most absurd conspiracy theory, and there is no reason for that except that they don't want to worship God. And that was clear yesterday. That the people who are advocating it, they do not want to worship God. They are ashamed to worship God. They think it's something bad. Right? So that's these are completely two different things. So if you have a problem, you can do what you want. Nobody's for. There is no compulsion in religion. La ikraha fid din, right? There is no compulsion. You and your group are free to abandon everything and do whatever you want. Booze and drink and promiscuity and homosexuality and prostitution and everything, right? Because everything is, you can twist Arabic around and legalize everything, right? And there's nothing left. And all you can do is laugh at Sunnis. Ha 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 ha. These people are having all these rules and regulations and we are free. You can do that. But that's what you're presenting is not a real problem at all. There is not a problem. You're talking about two words. There is no confusion about two words. There's nobody in history has disputed what the word as-salat means. There's nobody in history has disputed what siyam means, or disputed what khinzir means. So you're coming up with a problem that does not exist, right? So I don't know what to say.
Respectfully, the word tariq, I heard no solution. You're saying we're unsure, but it doesn't matter because it's not a fundamental thing we need to care about. Is that what you're saying?
You give me examples. I gave you an example. Actually, it's not even my example. It was Dude's example. I just mentioned it out of the top of my head because it's a good example. We can disagree on the meaning of words, which are not fundamental. This is not the core of the religion, right?
Okay.
So you come up with an example. You brought up with khinzir, which is an absurd example because nobody disagrees. Can you bring anybody in history who has said khinzir does not mean pig? Just one resource, other than Maverick or whoever your scholars are. I'm talking about before the last 20 years. Anybody who has disputed that the word khinzir means pig, show me a resource. That's it. Simple.
So is there no difference in meaning of a word when it comes to laws?
You show me, bring a dictionary and show me the word khinzir. Exact word khinzir means something other than pig. Any dictionary in the world. The challenge is open for you.
I'm not even in dispute about khinzir. It was just an example that I brought up because you were talking about it.
Okay, then bring an example. So then why bring it up? So there's no dispute, right? So it's clear, right? So if somebody is disputing, you and me agree that that person is just cooking up stuff, right?
Are there like none when it comes to laws at all?
You tell me. What you tell me? You're the one who's claiming stuff, right? You tell me.
I'm asking.
I'm asking you too. The stuff we talked about in your room yesterday, none of that stuff is disputed. There's nothing that needs to be disputed, right?
Okay.
I can tell you in practice, disputes are there. For example, where to tie your hand is something that Shias and Sunnis and different sects, Malikis and stuff dispute about. It's an irrelevant thing. It doesn't matter where you tie your hand. It's totally irrelevant, right?
Okay.
So what I'm trying
to
to point out is this. So the reason I introduced is there's a third position also. That's all I want to say. And the kind of examples that you're giving are so ridiculous that it's not even a problem, because there's nobody who disputes any of this thing in history. You're just cooking up disputes that don't exist. And that's not the reason. I believe that the reason that the clarifying messenger came was something much deeper, not to for this silly reason. So for example, a much deeper reason is that the Shahada was corrupted. The Shahadatain, they made it add Muhammad's name to it. And nobody knew that. Nobody could figure it out. And that is deep insight that the messenger needed to come to clarify. And the other thing is the concept of hadith itself, right? And that needed to be clarified because people had attributed hadith collections to the Prophet and made that a secondary source of religion. And that needed to be clarified. So those are the things. It's not whether khanzir means pig. For that, we don't need a messenger for that, right? That's just common sense. So the messenger came with a very rational approach that the Quran is the only source of divine revelation, and any other sources that are attributed as divine revelation need to be rejected. So that's the rational approach. The irrational approach is the Quran is the only source of information. Anything that we get from outside the Quran should be rejected. So if we have seen day and night masjids across the world doing a salah a certain way, and we reject it because, it's Quran alone, that's absurd, right? So I would suggest you watch some of the Jake Brancatella videos. He goes into this experience in great detail, and he describes the hypocrisy and absurdity that he came out of it eventually, right? Let's talk about that. If you want to talk about this experience, this irrational methodology, let's go down that path. I don't know why we keep discussing this and going back to it over and over. What I'm trying to get out of it, and there's no way out, but yeah. So I think if you want to carry this discussion further, that's what we should do. We should dissect one of his videos and see if it is real or not. Does it accurately reflect the Quranist experience or not?
He just keeps banging on about the Qibla verse. That's pretty much what I've heard from him, to be honest.
What's that?
He just keeps talking about
he's talking
Qibla,
about the fact his methodology was that everything should be from the Quran. That was his methodology. Ramadan should be from the Quran, right? Even though it's well known. And I gave you the example last time. Hajj is in the well-known months. The names of the months are not mentioned, but the Quranist approach is, we should dig it up. We should fabricate something from the Quran, even if it's not mentioned. So that's absurd, right?
God willing, next discussion with Maverick will be
no
about
more discussions with Maverick. You forced me into this discussion where I wasted so many hours with him, right? And what was your point? You asked me to give me the version of why do you need a scholar? Why can't you represent yourself? You should think for yourself. That's what you keep telling, right? Think for yourself. Why don't you think for yourself? Why do you need to drag this scholar every time? I don't understand.
Did I tell you that I agreed with Maverick?
Then why are you asking me to talk to somebody you don't even agree with? Why don't you speak for yourself? You speak for yourself. What is your theory? What is as-salam? Tell us. Tell us, what is as-salam? What is that?
Can I tell you why?
Yeah.
The reason why I want you to discuss with Maverick, because I'm in the middle at the moment, and I want to see how it plays out.
Why are you in the middle? Why don't you think for yourself?
Both of you are quite strongly opinionated.
Okay, so let's do this.
And it will be beneficial for me.
It wouldn't be beneficial for you unless you're not prepared to think for yourself. If you are prepared to think for yourself, there's no reason to be in the middle, right? You can have your own position. Maverick claimed that Surah 4, the traditional salat, makes no sense. That's what he claimed, right? And you dragged me, even though I left the room, you dragged me back and you asked me to explain 4:102, and I explained it perfectly. It's such a simple verse, and the traditional definition of salah makes perfect sense in that. Did you listen to what I said? Are you there?
Yeah.
Okay. Did you have any problem with that? And they couldn't have any problem with that, right? And they created a fake sin. It was very clear that the verse is saying that you break into two groups. The first group prays with the Prophet. The second group stands guard and watches their backs because of the fear of enemy attack. And then the first group that has prayed goes back and to what takes guard, and the other group prays with the Prophet. So simple, so that there won't be a surprise enemy attack. They won't get killed in one swoop. It was as simple as that. And there was no response, right? And the only response he said is, "Oh, let's put some numbers. Let's say 100 people come and 10 people are standing and some whatnot."
You started to address Darth Vader more than you did Maverick. I wanted to go to Maverick more.
So I have heard this guy Maverick and these people arguing. I've heard it's not that I was born yesterday or something, right? It's ridiculous nonsense, and I have wasted so much time on this stuff, right? And even yesterday, I wasted like hours and hours and hours. It's gone, this thing, right? So, I would suggest for you stand up for yourself, think for yourself. Don't be in the middle. Take a stand and express it, right? If it has any value, it has any this thing. It's okay to be challenged. It's okay to take a position. It's okay to be wrong also. I have been wrong so many times, and people have corrected my mistakes, and I accept it, right? It's okay to take a stand, be wrong, correct yourself, and if you're right, that's good, right? But these ridiculous, you're dragging me into. You've been telling me this for ages that I need to talk to Maverick.
Don't come next time. It's cool. Don't come next time, bro.
Yeah. So then don't even say that. So if you want to speak, you speak for yourself. The floor is open. And as far as I can see, you can see that I myself disagree with the people on this server, but they have not censored me, and they've not censored you either. And they've let their Shia speaking, people from all kinds of backgrounds. They've allowed all of us to speak. So all we have to do is speak instead of saying you have to come there and talk to this caller, and that doesn't make sense. Yeah.
May I just interject real quick to Taiba? Are you still there, Taiba?
Yeah.
Okay, I posted on there the verse I was meaning before, 24:54. Say, obey God and obey the messenger. If they refuse, and I'm going to interject here, they refuse for whatever reason. They don't like what it came out. I don't see it, whatever, they're refusing. And then I'm going back to Quran here. Then he is responsible for his obligations. Who's he? Is it the Quran that's a he? Or is it the messenger it's a he? He is responsible for his obligations, and you are responsible for your obligations. If you obey him, you're guided. The sole duty of the messenger is to deliver the message. So it's clearly saying his job is to deliver the message. Your job is to obey, and that helps. It's simple. And I would say this, that yes, absolutely. Everything that the B was, I agree with him wholeheartedly. You don't need anything. The Quran, any translation, God can guide you according to any translation. This isn't my opinion. I'm parroting, as they say, Dr. Khalifa, that yes, that is the case. But it's a tremendous blessing that you're given this masterclass course with all this advanced understanding as a platform for you to stand upon, which puts you light years ahead.
Yeah, definitely. I get what you're saying. I also think like Rashad does make sense. Like almost always. Just maybe like one just like the grapefruit. I like there are details of it that I just don't see in the Quran. Like I don't know. Maybe I haven't read it yet, but I just.
No, it's inference that he's saying. For example, he's saying there's a lot of discussions that happened. Those aren't the only words between the angels and God. God is being very efficient in sending the information, and it's just selective portions of the discussion. And from those discussions, by putting them together, he inferred a lot. There's that he says all the time. The Quran, here's the Quran, but it's so full of information that until the end of time, it'll just be coming out. That messenger can extract more information. That's what he did. He was extracting the in between the lines. That's how I see it.
Yeah, but yeah, like
kind of like a forensic scholar. That's how I would see him. He was kind of like a forensic scholar of the Quran, and seeing, oh well, he wouldn't have said that unless this was said. Oh, they said this because of this. Oh, it makes sense that this has to be said here. That kind of a thing. Kind of a forensic scholar. And I'm not saying that's what we do. I'm saying that's what he did because he's guided by God and we're to trust him. I wouldn't feel comfortable being a forensic scholar myself, connecting all these dots and coming up with conclusions on my own because I don't believe I'm not qualified. Number one, and number two, that would feel like following my own opinion too much.
yeah, like yeah, I would say like 99% of the time Rashad does make, like I can see what he's saying. Obviously, like when it comes to the great food, I would say I get confused. I don't know, if someone tells me that I have to like accept everything that he says about the great food, uh, then then I get kind of confused because I personally don't see many of the things in the Quran. Uh, I don't know like, what connections he got. I don't see it. I personally don't see it. Um, but yeah, for the most part, putting like salat and everything, I think he makes sense.
In particular the great feud, there's questions like why great feud, well why would there be a great feud, well whatever evidence do we have, and then you have, oh look at this, Satan is refusing to bow, questions like that. Oh wow, well what happened first, and well what are human beings, why did they get tossed down, well wait a second, they must have been connected with this great feud somehow, this inference, they're figuring it all out, that kind of thing. I'm saying to you, he was blessed with this obvious information from God, news from the past. Messengers are given news from the past. I'm not a messenger. I'm not going to give you any news from the past. But I'm saying that these things were clarified for us, and he gave it to us. That's how I see it. May God guide us to the truth, and may God protect you from anything wrong that I might be saying.
Yeah, and I feel like you watch like a lot of his videos. You can name it like off your head. So I wanted to ask, did you like in any of his videos like see him explain what he thinks of like the plural we in the Quran, right? Like do you know of anywhere where he like explains? Because someone told me that he like went into detail on some video about it. Like he explained it. So
Yeah, you're right. I remember you bringing that up before, and I think I dropped the ball. I was supposed to find that. I don't off the top of my head, but God willing, I'm going to put a note here, and as soon as I come by it, I'll make sure I get in touch with you.
okay, inshallah. Do you happen to know who wrote the appendix and stuff in the book? Like who wrote it? Did he write it himself?
Oh yeah, no, that's all his work. The only one that one might say, well, is it really his work? Is where we learned about that the righteous don't die, and we were told it was his intention to put it in there in the appendices, and where it is fully explained is in the submitter's perspective as well as in audios and videos, and it's so well established. They did put that, they let you know in that appendix that he died before he put it in here, but they say that he had instructions. Say whether you think they went too far by doing that or not, I believe it's moot point, simply because he explained it so thoroughly in audios, videos, and in the submitter's perspective.
So, Ahmed, if you don't mind, I would just detraction. I'd like to get some closure because this is something you were looking forward for a long time, for a month or so. You were asking me, calling me, and you called me to talk to Maverick. And finally, he didn't even have any idea on what Salat is. He was essentially saying that Salat is abrogated because it is only for the messenger, which does not make any sense. And even for the messenger, he was saying that it's just reciting the Quran. He didn't give any evidence for it. What was your take on that speculative theory?
Something that I will think about.
What is that?
Something that I will think about.
Okay, so you didn't get anything out of it so far that you can talk about it already?
Well, I wouldn't say that I'm convinced right away, but I will think about it.
Okay, but do you think, we have read the Quran several times, was any of what he said in the Quran, from the Quran, or he was just making stuff up?
I'll think about it.
Okay.
But yeah, man, yeah, I didn't force you to come on, bro. I wanted you to come on because you have quite a strong opinion. And I wanted to see it play out in the actual discussion.
Okay.
I want you to attend the Hajj thing if you want. I mean, I'm not going to force you if you think I'm forcing you. Up to you.
It's not forcing. I'm not. I think I probably said it incorrectly, and that's not what I intended. By forcing, I meant like in the problem I see is you are an intelligent person. And you have your own perspective, we have our own perspective, and we are discussing. And there is no need for you, either for you or for me, for that matter. I don't tell you, I don't know what it is. You need to talk to my scholar who comes there, right? I am not decided. I'm in the middle. So that's the only, because I know this person. It's not that I don't know him because he's put YouTube videos. It's not that I've not watched this before. I know what he's talking about, and it's so ridiculous that I don't even know where to start. It's just pure speculation, right? And so that's the reason why that's the reason I asked you to investigate. And if you want to discuss with me, we can discuss. But you thought it's a good idea that I come there, and I came there. And there's all these other people there. I don't know who they are. They're all cheering on and mocking and ridiculing statements, and they're interjecting, and it was like a free for all. And I don't think he substantiated his theory at all. I asked for evidence. He just said plain he doesn't have evidence, and he said it's not I cannot ask. That's what he said. It's not, God does not need to provide you something like that, right? So if he's making a claim, he has to bring evidence, and he can't just blame it on God and say God didn't do that. So it was just complete pure speculation. And he said he made a claim that the traditional salat does not make sense, and I explained it. There was no rebuttal after that. None of them had any rebuttal, right? They just said, "Oh, bring 100 people, 10 people." I don't know what they were talking about. In a normal scenario, that verse makes perfect sense. There's no need to reinvent. That was my point, and they had no answer for that. Their only answer was, "Oh, forefathers," and that's not a good reason, right? There's no reason to blindly disagree with forefathers unless there's an evidence. If that's the case, then they shouldn't be accepting the Quran either, because the Quran came through our forefathers, right? So these are the things, and it's not that I've not seen this before. I have, and I see it as a waste of time. So that's the reason I was hesitant to come, and I just talked and I didn't get anything out of it. And